Punks vs. Zombies by John Cronshaw. Chapter 1. The buzz vibrated through Tommy's fingertips as he struck the opening E string, tuning his guitar one last time before the chaos. Mickey paced behind him, tapping each drumstick methodically against his thigh to the beat of some internal metronome. Layla stood off to the side, eyes closed, plucking a bass line and mouthing the words to herself. This was it. 924 Gilman Street. The Gilman. A rite of passage for any punk band worth their weight in spit and safety pins. The chance they'd been waiting for. A make-or-break gig that could launch them from a no-name trio with a couple of DIY singles under their belt to becoming the real deal, keeping company with the greats who'd graced this stage before them. No pressure. Tommy plucked the A string, listening to it ring out. Too sharp. He tweaked the tuning peg until the note sang true. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught Layla glancing at something on the wall. Sick, she muttered. His gaze followed hers to a faded flyer tacked up backstage. It was an original promo poster for a show here, featuring one of their biggest influences, the legendary punk band Discharge. Seeing that relic of punk history in this sacred space, it really hit him. They were about to stand on the same stage where their heroes had shredded. Can you believe we're actually playing Gilman? Layla turned from the poster. This is where it all started. We're part of history here. He nodded, feeling that weight on his shoulders, but it was a good weight. They had a duty tonight, to live up to the legacy of this stage and give the crowd a show worthy of Gilman lore. No time to get sentimental, though. Mickey's drumstick taps accelerated, his dark eyes blazing with that manic intensity Tommy had come to expect before a show. Let's do this. Layla opened her eyes, letting her bass guitar hang at her side. We've got this. Tommy nodded, fingers gliding over the strings, riffing a quick warm-up. This is it. Our shot. We give it everything we've got tonight. No holding back. Right? Hell yeah, Mickey said, spinning a drumstick in the air before catching it in his fist. Layla raised her chin. Punk means no compromise. We do this on our own terms. That's right. Tommy slung his guitar over his shoulder. Let's show these West Coast bums what Philly's made of. They bumped fists, the three of them coming together in a tight huddle. Then Layla turned and stepped through the curtain, her bass thrumming as she took the stage. Mickey twirled his sticks one last time and followed. Tommy took a deep breath, psyched himself up with a few furious strums across the strings, and went to join them. Showtime. Chapter 2. The crowd's roar hit Tommy as he strode on stage. Blinding white lights shone down from above, illuminating the dark sea of faces. He blinked a few times, letting his eyes adjust. The venue was packed, not an empty spot in sight. Hardcore fans crushed up against the stage, staring up as he took his place at the mic. Layla stood to his right, decked out in torn fishnets and a studded denim vest, her natural afro adding an extra foot to her height. Her fingers flew over the fretboard, laying down a driving bass line that reverberated through the floor. Behind him, Mickey was a blur of motion, twirling and bouncing on his stool as he assaulted the drums. His tatted arms glistened with sweat under the hot stage lights. Tommy stepped up to the mic, guitar pick pinched tight between his fingers. Looking out at the faces, he was reminded why they did this. These people were here for the music, for the message, for the shared experience of being part of something real. We're crab versus lion, his voice boomed through the venue. And this is lies, lies, lies. Layla and he locked eyes, nodding in unison. On the downbeat, they launched into the opening riff, guitars roaring in sync, the crowd surging forward in a tsunami of flailing limbs and pumping fists. They powered through the end of the song, the last note still ringing out as he stepped back to address the riled-up fans. How's it going, Gilman? 100 middle fingers shot up in response, making him grin. We've got a lot more in store for you crazy mofos tonight. But first, I want to talk to you about something that matters. He took a breath, ready to launch into the speech he'd prepared. This was their chance to speak on the issues they cared about, to really connect with the fans. He wanted to make the most of it. But just then, Layla's bass cut back in, rumbling through the floor. He glanced back to see Mickey clicking his sticks together 4 times. The speech would have to wait. Tommy turned back to the crowd and let loose a primal scream into the mic, feeding off the energy as the music transported them to somewhere beyond words. He launched into the frenetic opening riff of Sucker Punch, his fingers flying over the frets. The crowd surged forward as Mickey's drums kicked in right on cue. He stole a glance at Mickey. Something still seemed off. The timing was on point, but the playing lacked its usual fire. Worried Mickey might be slipping, Tommy tried to catch his eye. But Mickey's gaze stayed locked on his snare. Tommy looked to Layla instead, hoping she'd picked up on it too. Her brow was furrowed, her head nodding along to the beat. They were only one song in, but cracks were starting to show in Mickey's facade. Tommy knew he had to snap him out of it. As they moved into the bridge, he broke script and ripped into a blistering solo. The crowd went nuts. Perfect. Tommy got right in Mickey's face, leaning over his drum kit and shredding with everything he had. Mickey finally looked up, and Tommy could tell he wanted to one-up him. Mickey dug his sticks in hard when the chorus hit, pounding the drums with newfound intensity. By the last few notes, Mickey was back, playing like a man possessed. When they finally crashed into the outro, the pure joy was back on Mickey's face. Tommy shot Layla a relieved look, and she just smiled, her fingers still working her bass with ease. They powered through the rest of the set. The mosh pit raged, bodies slamming in chaotic unison. Tommy fed off the energy, matching the crowd's fever pitch. This was it, their chance to prove they deserved to stand where so many punk legends had stood before. No more playing tiny clubs or house parties. Tonight, they showed Gilman what they could do. Tommy glanced over at Layla and Mickey. Layla's face was stoic, her eyes scanning the crowd intently as she bounced on the balls of her feet. The neon lights glinted off Mickey's piercings as he twirled a drumstick, amped up adrenaline radiating off him. Tommy strummed out the opening chords to their new song, No More, his pick scraping across the strings. The crowd exploded, the floor vibrating beneath his boots from the sheer force. Layla's bass kicked in, the deep throbbing notes syncing up with the frantic downstrokes of Tommy's guitar. Mickey clicked his sticks together, then unleashed a barrage of machine gun drumming that whipped the crowd into a frenzy. They were off and running. The music took over, instinct and muscle memory guiding Tommy. He was only dimly aware of his surroundings now. Only the band and the crowd existed. This was their purpose, why they sacrificed so much. It was for these moments. Tommy honed in on a girl in the front row, her eyes blazing with passion as she screamed the words back at the band. She understood. They all did. Tommy leaned into the mic, pouring everything he had into the vocals. The lyrics spoke of disillusionment and defiance. Behind him, Mickey was a whirlwind, his sticks bouncing off the drums with reckless power. Layla anchored them, her bass lines steady and hypnotic. She was their guide, keeping them true to their ideals even when the world collapsed around them. Her eyes were closed, lost in the music, but her righteous spirit shone through. The crowd had lost any sense of separation. They were one swirling mass united by sound. Bodies crashed against each other, carried by the current of distortion and drums. It was violent but not malicious. This was how they exorcised their demons. One kid couldn't have been older than 14, his spiked denim vest hanging loosely on a skinny frame. But his eyes were shut tight, lost in some transcendent headspace as he thrashed about. Tommy hoped the music spoke to his soul, that it offered him some temporary refuge from whatever turmoil awaited back home. A girl with a half-shaved head had tears streaming down her face, streaking her black mascara. She sang along to every word, matching the band lyric for lyric. Then there was the older punk with a weathered face, his leather jacket covered in patches from decades past. He watched them intently, nodding along in approval. Tommy lived for these connections, even if fleeting. To reach someone, to have the music resonate in their core. That's what gave him purpose. Punk had saved him once, and now he hoped to pay that gift forward. Mickey counted them in, and his sticks clicked together. Then the thundering blast of his drums filled the venue as he launched into a solo. Arms flailing, hair flying, he attacked the kit with precision and power. But as Tommy watched him closely, he noticed a few hesitations, subtle flubs that the untrained ear wouldn't catch. Layla glanced his way, her eyebrows raised. She had noticed it too. The crowd ate it up regardless, heads banging in time with Mickey's manic tempo. He rallied after those initial missteps, his solo building to an impressive climax. When he finished, the audience erupted in cheers. Mickey stood, breathing heavily, and flashed his signature grin. But Tommy sensed the smile was just for show. As they huddled to discuss the next song, Tommy put his hand on Mickey's shoulder. "You good, man?" He avoided Tommy's eyes. Yeah, just first gig jitters." Layla and Tommy shared a knowing look. First gig jitters? They'd been touring for months now. Something wasn't right, but the show had to go on. "All right." Tommy gave Mickey's shoulder a squeeze. "Let's finish this thing off strong." He hoped whatever plagued Mickey could wait until after the gig. They had come too far for distractions now. As Tommy turned back to the mic, the crowd's expectant roar fueled him. It was time. Layla and he locked in, ready to carry Mickey through this final stretch. Layla launched into the punchy bass line of their second single, "No Surrender." She owned that intro, her fingers flying over the frets, her afro swaying as she grooved. The audience ate it up, surging forward, their hands reaching up towards her. In that moment, she was their punk goddess. Their screams washed over her. Tommy looked over to Mickey, who nodded, the music starting to swell within him. Tommy stepped up to the mic, his fingers wrapping tightly around its cool metal frame. His words sliced through the air, lashing the crowd with their bitter anger and existential yearning. They were an army now, fueled by the merciless energy coursing through the venue. And as they launched into the chorus, Tommy felt it. The indescribable sensation of losing oneself in the music, the lyrics, the moment. It was an intoxicating blend of power and vulnerability, where everything and nothing mattered. By the time they wrapped up their final song, the audience was in a feverish state, chanting for an encore. Tommy glanced back at Mickey and Layla, both soaked in sweat but exhilarated. He nodded, a silent agreement passing between them. One more song, for the fans, for themselves, for the sacred halls of Gilman that had nurtured countless punk icons. As Tommy strummed the opening chords to their finale, Revolution's End, he looked out at the sea of faces. Young, old, broken, hopeful. They were the living testament to punk's enduring relevance. And tonight, they were one. Chapter 3. As they stepped off stage, the roar of the crowd still rang in Tommy's ears. The final screech of feedback fading to nothing. They headed down the cramped hallway to the green room. "That was insane!" Mickey clapped a hand on Tommy's back. "Did you see how nuts they were going out there?" Tommy felt the adrenaline still pumping through his veins. "For real, I don't think we've ever had a crowd that hyped." Layla grinned at him. "Well, it is the Gilman. We just became part of punk history tonight." She gave Tommy a friendly shove. "And when you called out no gods, no masters, perfection. Really drove home our message." Tommy smiled back. "Thanks, just speaking the truth, you know?" They filed into their backstage room, the others settling onto the grimy couch. Tommy stood in the doorway, noticing an old punk flyer hanging lopsided on the wall, remnants from another era. Mickey leaned forward, his tone turning serious. "I've got to be real, though. I was struggling tonight. My timing got all messed up." "We've got your back, man." Tommy held his gaze. "That's what bandmates do. We carry each other through the rough patches." Layla nodded. "Nobody's perfect, but we killed it out there." Mickey sank back into the couch. "You guys are the best. I don't know what I'd do without you." Layla grinned. "Probably play drums for some corporate pop band." They all laughed, the tension from earlier dissipating. Mickey looked up at Tommy with watery eyes and patted the seat next to him. "You sitting down?" Tommy shook his head. "I'll catch up with you guys later. Need to make a call." Tommy headed down the graffiti-lined hallway, the shouts and thrashing guitars of the other bands fading behind him. As he settled into an alcove, he took out his phone and called Neve. After 2 rings, her voice soothing and familiar filled his ears. "Hey, how was it?" "Killed it. The pit was insane." The video clicked on, revealing Neve with her auburn hair falling over a Ramones tee. Beside her, their son Sean banged on a tiny plastic guitar. "He's been shredding all day. Little guy misses his dad." Something twisted in Tommy's gut. "I miss you both too." As they said their good nights and Tommy slid the phone back into his pocket, He took a moment to breathe. But first, they had to finish this tour. Pushing off the wall, he headed back down the graffiti-lined hallway. The thrum of guitars grew louder as he wove through the maze of band members and fans until he spotted Mickey and Layla chatting by the bar. "There he is," Mickey greeted him, clapping him on the back. "How's the family?" "They're good, man. Sean's getting so big already." Tommy twisted off the cap of a water bottle. Layla sidled up next to him and gestured to the bottle. "Aw, cute. You're still sticking to the straight edge thing then?" Tommy shrugged. "You know I don't mess around with that stuff anymore." Layla rolled her eyes. "We're not asking you to get messed up with us. But you've got to loosen up a little. We just played the Gilman, damn it." Tommy sighed, aware of the tightrope he was walking. I know. It's your lives. Do what you want. I just don't want us to lose focus out here. We came to play music, not to party." Mickey slung an arm around Tommy and Layla's shoulders. "We get it, man. And we appreciate you keeping in line. But you've got to let loose every now and then, too. What happens on tour stays on tour, right?" Tommy managed a small smile. All right. I'll try to chill out a bit, but no promises once we're back in Philly." Chapter 4. The stench of stale sweat tinged with old vomit hit Tommy as he paused in the green room's doorway, his eyes adjusting to the dim lighting. Shadowy figures slouched on ratty couches and leaned against graffiti-tagged walls. Mickey shuffled in behind him, fingers twitching at his sides. Tommy knew Mickey was jonesing for a fix. He needed to learn to resist it or he'd drag them all down with him. Tommy threaded through the crush of bodies, ending up near the cooler of drinks in the corner. But the sight of all those beer cans made his stomach turn. He couldn't touch that poison, not if he wanted to make it through the rest of the tour with a clear head. This was going to be a long night. He took a long swig of water. The lukewarm liquid soothed his dry throat. A woman with pink hair and sleeve tattoos joined them, her eyes on Mickey. "You're the drummer from the last band, right?" She bumped his fist. "I'm Roxy. You guys slayed up there." Mickey blinked. Yeah, thanks." "That drum solo was sick," Roxy said. "You've got some serious skills." Tommy watched as the compliment seemed to diffuse some of the tension in Mickey's shoulders. "I'm Tommy." He offered a hand to Roxy. "Vocals and guitar. This is Layla on bass." "The Furious Minks are up next," Roxy said. "You should stick around. Check us out. I'd love to pick your brains about some collaborations too. It's not often we find bands we vibe with around here." "Sounds great," Tommy said. "We'll be right up front for your set." Roxy smiled, then disappeared into the crowd. Tommy nodded at Mickey, hoping the encouragement from Roxy would be enough to keep him steady. Layla must have noticed too. She slid up beside him, slinging an arm around his shoulders. "You reckon their bassist is as good as she thinks she is?" Mickey gave a weak smile. "I hope so." Chapter 5. Layla and Mickey weaved through the green room, Tommy close behind. The air was thick with sweat and ambition. Each band thought they could make it big, take the underground scene mainstream. But the odds were stacked high against them. Most would crash and burn. Tommy glanced over to see Zero, guitarist for Anarchy's Child, sneering in their direction. They'd crossed paths a few times. His band rocked, but the man was a prick. Well, if it isn't the Junior League punks. Before Tommy could reply, Layla wheeled around, eyes blazing. "You got something to say, Zero?" The room seemed to freeze, everyone waiting to see if this would escalate. Layla didn't back down easily, but tonight, they couldn't afford the trouble. "Forget it," Tommy said softly. "He's just trying to get a rise out of us." Layla hesitated, then finally turned away, shaking her head. Zero chuckled. "That's what I thought." Tommy bit his tongue and kept moving. Roxy leaned against the wall laughing. A tall guy with a blue mohawk cracked open a beer while regaling the others with some wild story. Tommy's eyes lingered on the beer. He drew his attention to Mickey. "You good, man?" Mickey met his eyes, then nodded. "All good." Tommy clapped Mickey on the shoulder and kept moving, wending towards the small, grimy bathroom. As he passed, conversations blurred together, words like quarantine and reports from LA rising above the din. He leaned against the sink, staring at his reflection. His mind wandered home, to Neve and Sean. Just 2 more weeks on the road. He just had to hold it together until then. Then he could go back to what really mattered. He took a deep breath and steeled himself before stepping back out into the green room. The other bands buzzed with pre-show energy. As he made his way towards Mickey and Layla, a grating voice cut through the din. "What's it feel like performing sober?" Zero asked, voice dripping with contempt. "Bet you can't even loosen up enough to get into the music." Tommy met his glare evenly, refusing to take the bait. But out of the corner of his eye, he saw Mickey's hands curl into fists. He put a hand on Mickey's arm. "Leave it." Zero smirked, raising his beer in mock salute. "Righteous dudes, keep fighting the good fight." As he sauntered off, Mickey shook his head. "Asshole." Tommy nodded, trying to push Zero's dig out of his mind. Layla appeared, an old friend in tow. "Guys, you remember D, right? Used to be in Bleeding Eardrums?" Tommy smiled. "Course. How's it going, man?" "Good." D bumped their fists. "Long time no see. Layla was just catching me up on life with you lunatics." He pointed to a woman with black cropped hair standing next to him. "You met Kim?" Tommy grinned. "Let me guess, bass player, right? Let me guess, cocky frontman looking for a kick in the nuts?" He dipped his head. "Maybe right about the first part. Could do without the kick in the nuts, though." She cocked a pierced eyebrow and turned to someone else. They made small talk with D, reminiscing about past gigs at smaller venues, before everything blew up with the second single. Soon, D left to rejoin his bandmates. Across the room, Mickey leaned against the wall, his face half hidden in shadow. Even from here, Tommy could see the sheen of sweat on his skin, the restless tapping of his foot. Part of him ached to go to him, but a larger part held back, uncertain. They'd been down this road before. Layla followed his gaze. She stiffened, her eyes narrowing. "Hey, did Mickey seem off to you tonight?" "I don't know. Maybe he was just amped up like the rest of us." "Tommy, you know we love Mickey, but we gotta talk about whatever he's going through. The band comes first, right?" He exhaled, his shoulders slumping. She was right. Mickey was family, but if he kept this up, everything they'd built would come crashing down. "It's just complicated, you know." He leaned back against the wall. "Mickey's been battling some demons. I want to help him, but he's got to meet us halfway." Layla folded her arms, her brow furrowed. "Look, I get it, but we took a stand. No more messing around with that junk. It goes against everything we are." He ran a hand through his hair. "I know. But it feels cold to just cut him loose. He's family." "Of course he is." She let out a sigh. "But we've got to draw the line somewhere." He nodded, even as his gut twisted. She put a hand on his shoulder. "We're in this together, okay? Whatever happens." He managed a small smile. "You crushed it tonight," Layla said, breaking the silence. The crowd was eating up every note. "Yeah, we were really locking in, especially on that last song." He smiled to himself. "Remember when we first started going to gigs? We were just a couple of kids then, barely old enough to sneak out at night." Layla chuckled. "Barely tall enough to see the bands. Never thought we'd end up on this side of the stage. It's like we're actually doing it. We've worked hard. It's crazy to think we just played on the same stage as Rancid, AFI, Jawbreaker." Layla smirked. "Don't forget Operation Ivy. They changed everything back in the day. Hell yeah. Op Ivy took punk and made it their own thing. Made me want to start a band the first time I heard Energy. You know Green Day got their start here?" It was his turn to smirk. "Those sellouts? Who gives a crap if they sold out? I bet most bands here got into them and blink before the proper stuff. Bit like a gateway drug to punk, you know." He shrugged. "I guess. But it's insane that we're a part of the Gilman's legacy now, too. It really is surreal. Our band name will be etched in this wall soon." Her smile sagged. "But we can't keep turning a blind eye when it comes to Mickey. I feel like we're on the edge of something here." "You're right. We should speak to him." Layla squeezed his arm. He nodded. This could go either way. Chapter 6. Mickey stood across the green room, knocking back a shot with some guys Tommy didn't recognize. Mickey's glazed eyes and sloppy grin told Tommy everything he needed to know. Layla tensed up. "Let's get this over with." As they made their way over, Mickey caught sight of them. "Hey, there's my bandmates. Come do a shot with your boy." "We need to talk, Mickey." Tommy lowered his voice. "Alone." Mickey's face fell for a split second before he forced another grin. "Whatever you say, boss man, let's powwow." He threw an arm around Tommy's shoulder and steered him out the door, Layla close behind. The sounds of the party faded as Mickey led them down the hallway. Leaning against the wall, Mickey's eyes were bloodshot and unfocused. "So what's up, compadres?" He looked between them and tilted his head. "Don't tell me this is an intervention." Tommy rubbed the back of his neck. "We're worried about you, Mickey. This isn't you." Mickey scowled. "Oh, so now you know me better than I know myself. I'm just having fun, living a little." "Mickey, you're our brother," Layla said. "But this can't go on. The band, the music, it has to come first." Mickey slammed his fist against the wall, causing Layla and Tommy to jump. "The band? It's always about the goddamn band with you two. What about me, huh? What about what I need?" Tommy thought about the nights he'd stayed up with Mickey, talking him through the darkness, the times he'd cleaned him up and lied to cover for him. "We know you're hurting, man," Tommy said. "But the partying, the drugs, this road won't end well." Mickey looked at him, his eyes brimming with tears. In that moment, Tommy saw the friend he'd grown up with peering back at him from behind the fog. "I don't know how to stop, man. I'm not as strong as you. I can't just go straight edge like you." Tommy pulled him into an embrace. "You've got us, brother. We're in this together." He felt Mickey's body shaking with quiet sobs. Layla put a hand on Mickey's shoulder, her eyes misty. Layla was the first to break the silence. She pulled back, looking at Mickey with a mix of sadness and resolve. "Things can't stay the way they are. The band, the music, it means nothing if we lose you." Mickey wiped his eyes, sniffling. "I know. I'm sorry. I feel so lost sometimes." "You don't have to go through this alone," Tommy said. "But you've got to want to get clean. No more lies or excuses." Mickey nodded. "I'll do it. For real this time. I don't want to be that person anymore." Layla took his hand. "One day at a time. We'll be with you every step." Tommy put his hand on top of theirs. Mickey managed a small smile. "It'll be tough," Tommy said, his voice strained. "But we'll get you help. There are places you can go, people you can talk to." Mickey shook his head. "I can't leave the band, the tour, the album." Tommy gripped his shoulder. "None of that matters if we lose you. Your health comes first." Layla stepped closer. "Take the time you need to get better. When you're ready, your spot will be waiting." Mickey's arms trembled, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he fought back sobs. He wiped his eyes and gave them a shaky smile. "I don't deserve friends like you, but I promise, I'm gonna fix this." Tommy clapped him on the back. "Damn right. We're family, no matter what." As Tommy stepped back into the green room, the PA crackled. "Attention, please remain inside the building. We have an emergency situation." Silence descended, thick and heavy. Eyes darted around, questions hovering on lips. Layla edged closer, her brow furrowed. "An emergency situation?" Mickey frowned. "What the hell's that mean?" Voices bubbled up, sharp with worry. Bands clustered together, arguing about what to do. Mickey swayed on his feet, his face drained of color. His eyes met Tommy's, round with fear. Tommy jumped up on a chair. "Yo, listen up." His voice rang out sharp, cutting through the clamor. All eyes turned to him. "We've got to keep our heads, all right? Freaking out won't solve nothing." Layla nodded, arms crossed. The others quieted. "What's going on, Tommy?" Roxy asked. "You know something?" He shook his head. "No clue, but we'll get answers. Whatever this is, we'll handle it." He nodded to the others as he stepped down from the chair, trying to project a confidence he didn't feel. Mickey swayed again, his face now tinged green. Before Tommy could reach him, Mickey stumbled out of the room. Lila shot him a worried look. "I'll check on him," Tommy said, following Mickey out. The hallway stood empty, the silence heavy after the buzz of the green room. He hurried past peeling posters and graffiti-tagged walls. As he neared the bathroom, retching echoed from within. He pushed open the stall to find Mickey, hunched over a toilet bowl, vomiting violently. Mickey looked up at him with bloodshot eyes, his face dripping with sweat. Tommy grabbed some paper towels and helped clean Mickey up. His skin felt hot to the touch. "Let's get you back to the others." Mickey leaned heavily against him as they shuffled forward. They returned to the green room and Tommy set Mickey down on the couch. The cacophony of ringtones sliced through the chatter, dozens of different notifications, bleeding out in unison. Around him, people froze mid-sentence, hands diving into pockets and bags to retrieve their phones. He fished his out, his pulse quickening when he glimpsed the lock screen. 20 missed calls, too many texts and news alerts to even count. With a sense of dread, he opened one of the news apps. Chaos in West Berkeley as infection spreads. Zombie outbreak. Residents urged to stay inside. Every headline was more alarming than the last. He scrolled through frantically, bile rising in his throat as shaky videos loaded, scenes of bloody violence straight out of a Romero film. This wasn't a prank or some kind of hoax. This was the goddamn zombie apocalypse. Chapter 7. Tommy looked up, meeting Layla's wide eyes. Without a word, he tilted the screen her way, watching the color drain from her face. She gave a tiny nod, her jaw set with grim determination. Soon, everyone was glued to their phones, sharing panicked whispers and pointed looks. A few people made a beeline for the exit, only to be held back by their bandmates. The urge to flee pulsed through Tommy's veins. "Guys, hang on." He stepped into the center of the chaos. "We can't just run out into the streets blind. We need a plan." Layla appeared at his side. "Tommy's right, it's not safe out there." Her eyes flicked to Mickey, who was staring into space, disconnected from the panic around him. "We should barricade the place," Tommy said. "Turn it into a stronghold, block the doors and windows with anything we can move." There were nods and murmurs of assent. People sprang into action, shifting amps and drum kits, piling up chairs and tables. The doors were sealed off with finality, but it did little to shut out the harsh reality now crashing down upon them. Someone pulled up a live news feed on their phone. Men and women huddled around the tiny screen, a dozen heads craned together. On the cracked display, scenes of unthinkable violence played out in real time, just miles away. Berkeley was burning. Tommy stood transfixed on the images, the weight of responsibility bowing his shoulders. He thought of Neve, of the 2-year-old son awaiting his return. He might never see their faces again. Swallowing hard, he steeled himself. What came next? He didn't know. But he'd be damned if he didn't do everything in his power to get back to them. He took a deep breath and turned to face the group, his bandmates and the others looking to him expectantly. "All right, listen up. I know everyone's scared. Believe me, I am too." He met their eyes one by one, his own fear reflected back. "We've got to stick together, watch each other's backs, conserve food and water, take shifts keeping watch. We've got the numbers and resources to ride this out for a while." He glanced at the barricaded entrance. "As long as we lay low, don't draw attention, we might just be okay." A petite girl with a ruby-red mohawk spoke up. "But for how long? We can't stay cooped up here forever." He raked a hand through his hair. "I don't know. All I know is we need to be smart, make a plan. We'll figure the rest out as we go." A tense silence settled over the room. Then Layla stepped forward. "Tommy's right. We look out for each other now, y'all hear? Ain't no zombies gonna mess with a bunch of punks like us." A ripple of laughter broke the tension. As the group dispersed, Layla sidled up beside Tommy, worry etching her face. "Where's Mickey?" "I'll find him. You help the others divvy up supplies and take guard duty." Layla gave his arm a squeeze. As he moved through the room, he caught glimpses of the news footage still playing on various phones. Each image was like a punch to the gut. This was really happening. He found Mickey huddled behind a stack of amps, pale and trembling. His pupils were dilated, hands scratching at his arms. Tommy crouched down beside him. "Mickey, hey, look at me." Mickey lifted his head slowly. "I ain't gonna make it, man. I need some plez like now." Tommy gripped his shoulder. "You're stronger than your cravings. We're gonna get you through this." Even as he said the words, he wondered if he was telling the truth. He helped Mickey to his feet, keeping a firm hold on his arm as he swayed. His skin was cold and clammy. "Come on, let's get you some water and something to eat." As they made their way across the room, he noticed Layla and the others hauling furniture and equipment to block the doors and windows. An amp crashed to the floor, the discordant twang of an unplugged electric guitar following it. Tommy sat Mickey down against the wall and grabbed a bottle of water from the green room mini fridge. Mickey gulped it so fast some dribbled down his chin. He looked up at Tommy. "We're all gonna die, ain't we?" "No one's dying on my watch." Tommy tried to sound firm, confident. But inside, doubt gnawed at him. He didn't know if he could protect anyone. Not from this. He squeezed Mickey's shoulder, then headed over to help Layla and the others barricade the entrance. They had to hold this place down, for as long as they could. It was all they could do. Tommy nodded at Layla as he joined her and some of the other bands barricading the front entrance. They pushed a couple of heavy amps up against the doors, then stacked chairs and mic stands on top. It wouldn't stop a horde of zombies, but it might slow them down. "How's Mickey holding up?" Layla asked, her voice strained as she shoved an amp into place. "He's freaked out. We all are." Tommy rubbed his chin. "Once we get this barricaded, we should do a supply check. Take inventory of what we've got here to survive on." Layla opened her mouth to respond when a shriek pierced the air. They both snapped their heads towards the sound. On the small backstage TV, a shaky video showed absolute chaos on the streets of San Francisco. People running, screaming, dark shapes lumbering after them, blood splattering the pavement. A hush fell over the room as they all stared, frozen. This was real. It was here. The video kept playing as they all stood in horrified silence. More scenes of carnage and panic flashed by. A mob smashing store windows, soldiers opening fire on infected civilians, bodies littering the streets. Tommy tore his eyes away and scanned the room. Mickey sat hugging his knees in the corner, eyes glazed over. Roxy was pacing back and forth, chewing on her lip, muttering under her breath. The other bands looked various stages of freaked out and shell-shocked. He grabbed a hammer and some boards, securing the back door while trying not to think about Neve and Sean back home. Were they safe? Had the infection spread to Philly yet? His stomach churned with worry, but he forced himself to focus on the task at hand. Barricade now, freak out later. Once the back was secured, he moved to help Layla reinforce the front. They worked in silence, the weight of their new reality hanging thick in the air. "You really think we can make it through this?" Layla asked. "Honestly, I have no idea, but we have to try. Staying together here, keeping our wits about us. It's the best chance we've got." Layla nodded, hammering another board across the door. "Well, I'm with you either way. You know that. We'll get through this, however we can." Tommy stepped back as they finished the barricade, sweat beading on his forehead. The gravity of their situation sat like a stone in his gut, but the work gave him purpose, kept the panic at bay. He almost laughed at the absurdity of it all, but one look at Mickey's pale, sweaty face killed any humor he felt. The bloke was in bad shape already, and this chaos wasn't helping. "Hey," Tommy said, gripping Mickey's shoulder. "Just stay close to me, all right? We're gonna be okay." Mickey nodded, eyes wide and fearful. Chapter 8. The stale air clung to Tommy like a second skin as he scanned the crowded green room. Fear and desperation charged the atmosphere, making the hairs on his arms stand on end. They were sitting ducks here at the Gilman. That much was clear. The barricades wouldn't hold forever against the undead. Roxy shoved through the crowd. "We gotta get the hell out of Dodge." She jabbed a finger at the boarded-up windows. "Let's grab the vans and get on the road. The Bay Area's swarming with those things, and it's only gonna get worse if we stick around." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Even Zero nodded, his face grim. "You sure that's smart?" Tommy asked. "We got no idea what it's like out there. Maybe better to stay put." Layla moved to his side, uncertainty clouding her eyes. "Time's wasting, Tommy boy," Mickey said, with a hollow laugh. He looked dreadful, face gaunt and pale, dark circles under his eyes. Tommy wanted to argue, to make them see reason, but the tide had already turned against him. With a sigh, he hoisted his guitar case. His fingers hesitated on the door handle. Guitars, amps, merch boxes, and duffel bags cluttered the hallway as everyone scrambled to pack up their belongings. Tommy caught Zero's eye as the latter heaved a couple of bass drums toward the back door. Zero shot him a tense grin that didn't reach his eyes. Grab anything useful, yeah. No telling when we'll restock. Tommy scanned the room for anything that might increase their chances of survival out there. A glint from the corner bar caught his attention. An untouched bottle of Jameson. He quickly snatched it up, feeling the weight of the full liter in his hand. Closing his eyes, he set the whiskey back down and crammed a couple of water bottles into his backpack, along with some t-shirts and a dog-eared copy of Kerouac's On the Road. If these were his last hours on Earth, he wanted a few familiar comforts close by. He swung his pack over his shoulder and headed outside to where the vans were parked. Most of the gear was already loaded up, although a few band members were still scrambling with last-minute items. A drumstick clattered to the pavement. Mickey's fingers trembled as he tried grabbing it, the stick jittering just out of reach. "Need a hand?" Tommy asked. Mickey's bloodshot eyes flicked up at him, dark circles pooled beneath them. "I got it." Tommy watched him fumble for the stick, his hands shaking badly. "We've got a roll," Tommy said. "Just let me help you with that kit." Mickey grimaced, his jaw clenched. Behind him, Layla shot Tommy a worried glance as she loaded up the van. He reached for the bass drum. Mickey's hand snapped out, grabbing his wrist. "I said, I got it!" His fingers dug into Tommy's skin. He met Mickey's eyes. "When's the last time you slept, Mickey?" He dropped Tommy's wrist, turning away. "Leave it, man." "Or shut up? How bad are the cravings?" Mickey whirled, face twisted in anger. "You don't know." "Guys," Layla appeared between them. "Fight later, survive now, we need to move." Mickey scowled but stayed silent. They finished packing up, the drums thudding heavily into the van. Layla slammed the back doors shut. Tommy sidled up next to her. "You doing okay?" She glanced at him, lips pursed. "As okay as any of us can be right now. I just hope we have enough fuel and food to get us far from here." He nodded. "Me too." She offered him a weak smile. "Well, guess we're committed now." He smiled back. "Let's get this show on the road." Roxy hopped into the driver's seat of the lead van. Tommy slid open the side door of their van and climbed in next to Layla. Mickey was already sprawled across the back seat, eyes closed. "You good?" Tommy asked. Mickey mumbled something incoherent. Layla gave him a knowing look as she started the engine. "Here we go." The van lurched forward, following the others. As they pulled out of the parking lot, he took one last look at 924 Gilman Street. Who knew if they'd ever be back here? Where they were even going now was still uncertain. Chapter 9. They drove in tense silence for a while, trailing behind Roxy and Zero's vans in the dark. Tommy fiddled with the radio, but got nothing but static. Layla passed him her phone and gestured for him to plug it in and secure it on the dashboard. "Call Roxy." The ringing tone pulsed through the van's speakers. "Yeah," Roxy said. "So what's the plan?" "We'll take the 580 towards the Central Valley. Should be safer out there." Tommy wasn't convinced. The highway was sure to be a nightmare. But before he could object, Layla shot him a look that said, "Not now." He slumped back with a sigh, bracing himself for the long road ahead. Running off into the unknown seemed reckless, but Roxy was right about one thing. Staying put was getting riskier by the minute. Layla ended the call and turned to him. "You think this is the right call?" He shook his head. "No, not at all. But it's not like we had much choice." Up ahead, the street was vacant, save for the occasional shambling figure in the distance. A toppled streetlight jutted across the asphalt like a felled tree. "Any idea where we're even headed?" Layla shrugged one shoulder. "Your guess is as good as mine, but we stick together and I guess we'll figure the rest out on the go." He knew she hated acting without a plan. But for now, aimless momentum was all they had to go on. He kept his eyes glued to the road, trying to ignore the creeping dread in his gut. Tommy took a deep breath and focused on the dark stretch of road ahead, illuminated only by the van's dim headlights. Just yesterday, They were gearing up for a show at 924 Gilman Street, high on the pre-gig rush that comes before taking the stage. Now they were fleeing from the place they'd dreamed of playing for years. He knew they didn't have a choice. Berkeley had become increasingly dangerous by the hour, those things swarming everywhere, drawn by the chaos. Perhaps Roxy was right. Staying put at the venue would have been suicidal. Yet, part of him questioned the decision. Were they just delaying the inevitable? Tommy glanced over at Layla. Her forehead was creased with worry, her eyes fixed on the road. "You hanging in there?" Layla exhaled shakily. "Trying to. This is insane," he finished for her. She nodded. "What if we've made a mistake? What if it's not better out here?" "It's too late to turn back now. We'll figure this out, we have to." Layla didn't look convinced, but didn't argue. They drove on in tense silence, the van's rumbling engine, and the occasional moan from Mickey in the back, the only sounds. "How's the gear holding up back there?" Layla sniffed. "The way things are going, I'm not sure how useful guitars and a drum kit will be in the goddamn zombie apocalypse." "Hey, you never know. Nothing like a protest song to lift spirits during the end times, eh?" "If you break into Kumbaya, I'm throwing you and your guitar out the window." Mickey twisted around, his eyes ablaze. "Would you two shut up already? In case you haven't noticed, the world is ending here. Have some goddamn respect." "We know, man." Tommy raised his hands. "And we're going to get through this, okay? All of us. But we're just having a joke. Keep the spirits up." They drove on in silence. The streets were choked with abandoned cars, smoke rising in the distance. Screams and gunshots echoed through the empty buildings looming around them. Tommy's eyes stayed fixed on the road, but his mind wandered. He thought back to the early days when it was just him and Mickey playing in his mom's garage. Mickey had been a force of nature behind the kit, and Tommy had fed off that energy. Then drugs came into the picture, pulling Mickey down a rabbit hole. Tommy glanced at Mickey, his pale, clammy skin and bloodshot eyes revealing the extent of his troubles. "How you holding up?" I'm okay, man." "Bull crap," Layla snapped. "You're not okay, talk to us." Tommy watched as Mickey groaned, his face glistening with sweat. "What do you want me to say? I messed up, but I'm gonna get clean. Just please don't kick me out of the band." "We're not kicking you out," Tommy said, "but you need professional help." "No clinics, they'll lock me up." "That's not an option anymore," Layla said. "Your habit has gone too far." Tommy nodded. "We'll find a way that keeps us together, but you can't do this alone, and you can't do it on the road." Mickey looked down, shaking. After a long pause, he looked up. "Okay, if we get back to Philly, I'll do whatever it takes." Layla dodged abandoned cars and panicked pedestrians. She winced when a mob spilled across an intersection ahead. A cyclist swerved suddenly in front of the van. Layla slammed the brakes, the tires screeching as they slid to a halt, just inches away from a collision. "Get off the road, dickhead." Layla shoved the van back into gear. They continued, one intersection at a time. All they could do was keep moving. Reaching the outskirts of Berkeley, the knot in Tommy's chest loosened slightly. The streets were clearer, but the path ahead was filled with unknowns. The van's engine roared as they hurtled down the streets. Mickey's cries of pain echoed through the vehicle, and Tommy's heart ached, knowing he could do little to alleviate his friend's suffering. "Talk to me, Mickey," Tommy said. "Tell me about playing your first show. Remember how pumped we were?" A flicker of recognition crossed Mickey's feverish eyes. Yeah, the place was... I smashed the drums. So hard." He chuckled weakly. "Thought my hands would bleed." "But you kept playing," Layla said. "You were amazing. The crowd loved you." Mickey managed a weak smile. "Hell yeah, we killed it." His energy soon faded, his face twisting in pain once again. Tommy gripped the arm of his seat as they zoomed through the streets. The van fishtailed around another overturned car, its alarm blaring, its lights still flashing. The clock tower loomed ahead, resembling a massive tombstone. "Zombies," Layla pointed as a mob of stumbling figures emerged from behind the stone columns. "How are we supposed to get through that?" Tommy sat straight. "We'll wreck the van." Layla slammed the brakes, causing Mickey to tumble off the back seat. "We make a path." Tommy blinked. We do what? Get weapons. They scrambled, grabbing whatever they could swing or stab with. Drumsticks, microphone stands, a tire iron. Tommy tossed Layla a heavy wrench and she caught it one-handed, her jaw set. Ready? Layla met his eyes. He nodded. Let's do this. Layla flung open the side door and leapt out, tire iron arcing through the air to crush the first zombie's skull. Tommy was right behind her, taking down two more with a guitar stand used as a bat. Mickey dropped his weapon, a drumstick, which clattered to the asphalt. He stared at it as the zombies closed in. Zero from Anarchy's Child appeared beside Tommy, wielding a bass guitar like a battle axe, his bandmates helping to push back the undead. Members of the Furious Minks joined in, clearing a path through the mob. Back inside, everyone, Roxy pointed to the vans. Go, go, go. Tommy clambered back inside. Layla slammed her foot down on the gas, speeding away. Her hands clenched the wheel tight. Mickey sat slumped in the back, staring at his shaking hands. That was too close, Layla said. You nearly died out there. Sorry, Mickey said. We can't have weak links. You need to focus. I know, Mickey said. I'll do better. Layla glanced back at him. Make sure you do. There's no room for any more screw-ups, you understand me? Mickey nodded. I said I'm sorry. Geez. Chapter 10. Crashed cars and wandering zombies clogged the streets ahead. Layla swerved to avoid them, jerking the wheel sharply to miss a zombie lunging into their path. It thudded against the side of the van before staggering away. Too close, she muttered. Tommy nodded, his hands pressed firmly against the dashboard. They drove in tense silence for a few more minutes. When Tommy spotted a store up ahead, he cleared his throat. We should pull in and stock up. Let's make it quick. Layla signaled to the other vans and came to a stop. They stepped into the cold night air. The area looked deserted. Tommy tried the door. Locked. Step aside, children. Zero approached with a tire iron, smashing the window. Layla rolled her eyes. Subtle. Tommy climbed through the broken window into the mess inside. While Layla gathered snacks and lighters, Tommy grabbed water bottles and maps. Where you headed? Zero asked. Philly, Tommy said. We're headed back to Pittsburgh. Should stick together, strengthen numbers. Yeah. Returning to the van, Tommy jumped into the passenger seat, Layla taking the wheel. Tommy glanced back at Mickey, his eyes glazed, his body still shaking. Navigating the empty streets towards the highway, Layla swerved around a lone, staggering zombie. She gunned the engine as she weaved between abandoned cars and debris, the van's worn shocks bouncing them around like pinballs. Layla sighed. We need to find more weapons at the next stop. Maybe a gun store? She shook her head. No guns. We can't afford to attract more of those things with noise. And if we've got guns, we'll need bullets. That'll be a lot of weight to carry around. Tommy nodded. She was right, of course. They'd have to get creative. What about a sporting goods store? Baseball bats, golf clubs? That could work. Anything silent but deadly. She paused, biting her lip. Do you think Mickey is up for this, for any of it? Mickey sat curled against the window now, eyes closed. I don't know. But what can we do? We've survived worse. She turned to him, eyebrows raised. Worse? Worse than a goddamn zombie apocalypse? He grinned. What about those late-night van breakdowns? That club owner in Chicago where the promoter did a runner and we had to beg for gas? Or that dive in Newark that ended up being full of Nazis? She laughed. When you put it like that. After a while, they approached a small town. An old-fashioned main street. Brick storefronts. Tommy caught Layla's eye and nodded. Time to gear up and face whatever came next. She pulled the van up onto the sidewalk and cut the engine. No signs of zombies. The other vans parked up behind them. They slipped out, weapons in hand. Layla with her bass guitar, Tommy clutching a busted drum stand. Mickey trailed behind, holding a single drumstick. Zero stepped in and jimmied the lock on the nearest shop, a mom-and-pop sporting goods store called Frank's. A bell jangled as they entered the dark space. Tommy hurried to the back wall, grabbing the biggest baseball bat he saw. Lila found the golf clubs and shoved some into her bag. Tommy's eyes lit up. Hey, an axe section. Layla joined him as he selected a small fireman's axe. perfect for lopping off zombie heads. He also grabbed a hunting knife to strap to his belt. They gathered up rope, flashlights, and other gear before slipping back out of the shop. Layla held up a hand, gesturing for quiet. Distant moans reached them, echoing through the empty streets. The zombies were coming. Tommy rushed back to the van. As the noises grew louder, Layla slammed the van door shut. "Let's get out of here," she said. "We're as ready as we're going to be." She slammed her foot down on the gas, speeding off down the street. The moans faded behind them. After a few minutes, Mickey spoke up. "So what's the plan? We can't just drive forever." Layla turned around to face him. "We need to get out of the cities. Find an isolated place we can fortify and wait this out. Somewhere rural. A farm, maybe." "A farm?" Mickey scoffed. "Seriously? We're a punk band, not farmers." Layla rolled her eyes. "It was just a suggestion. We need self-sufficiency right now." Tommy shook his head. "We're heading back to Philly. That's the beginning and end of the plan for me." He thought about Neve and Sean. Were they safe? He had to get back to them. A scraping sound came from above. All three of them looked up. A zombie crawled across the van's roof, peering down through the front windshield. Its milky eyes locked with Tommy's. Layla screamed and slammed the brakes. The zombie slid off the hood with a thud. Mickey sat up straight. "What the hell?" More zombies emerged ahead. Layla threw the van in reverse, narrowly missing the Minks van behind them. "Brace yourselves." Tires squealing, she whipped the van around in a chaotic three-point turn. The zombies lurched towards them. Layla sped off in the other direction, gripping the steering wheel tight as they sped away. The image of the zombies' milky eyes etched into Tommy's mind. What the hell were those things? "That was too close for comfort," Layla said. "We need to be more careful." "No more main roads," Tommy said. "We'll stick to the side streets from here on out." Layla gave a terse nod. They drove in tense silence, each lost in their own thoughts. After a while, the glowing vacancy sign of a roadside motel beckoned. Good enough for a few hours' sleep at least. If open. Layla pulled into the empty parking lot and killed the engine. "Let's get a room and try to rest." Tommy nodded. "Good call. We can figure out our next moves in the morning." Layla and Mickey both looked dead on their feet. They grabbed their meager supplies and headed for the motel office, hoping for a few precious hours of safety. Tommy was surprised when a woman greeted them at the front desk. She didn't seem fazed by 3 punk bands turning up after midnight. None of them mentioned the zombies. Room key in hand, Tommy unlocked the door to their dingy motel room, and they shuffled inside. Mickey collapsed onto one of the twin beds, not even bothering to take his boots off. Layla set her bag on the other bed. "At least someone's gonna sleep tonight. Let him rest for now. We'll figure this out." Tommy did a quick sweep of the room to make sure it was secure. They'd stayed in worse places. He grabbed a couple of sodas from the mini-fridge and handed one to Layla. They sat at the small table by the window, looking out at the parking lot bathed in the red glow of the vacancy sign. Layla tapped a rhythm on the table. "So what's next? It's a long drive back to Philly." Tommy took a deep breath. "I think we need to find him some help. Get him to a doctor, maybe get some methadone or something." Layla nodded. "That could work. But where? Everything's chaos out there." "We'll figure it out." He finished his soda and tossed the can into the trash. "Let's get some rest. We can talk to Mickey in the morning." Layla agreed. They did one more check of the room, then finally laid down to sleep. Chapter 11. A loud knock jolted Tommy awake. He got up and moved to the door. "Who is it?" "It's Roxy." He opened the door and met her fear-filled eyes. "Hey, what's up?" "We've got a situation, Tommy." Her usually melodic voice was tight, clipped. "It's Kim." Tommy and Layla gathered their things and roused Mickey awake to follow Roxy out to the parking lot. Members of her band stood near their van in the gray morning light. "Show them," Roxy said to Kim. Kim jutted out her chin and yanked up her sleeve. The wound was unmistakable, a savage crescent-shaped bite mark, flesh ragged and oozing, the telltale sign of infection. "Damn." Mickey took a step back. "How'd it happen?" Tommy asked. "Back at the clock tower, Roxy said. But she says she feels fine. No fever, nothing. She held up her hands. We don't know what to do. There's a lot we don't understand about this virus, Tommy said. Maybe she can fight it off. We shouldn't make any rash decisions. Layla's eyes blazed, her mouth a hard line. She needs to leave. Now. If that thing spreads, it's the only responsible thing to do. Let's think this through. Tommy rubbed the back of his neck. We can't just abandon her. Layla glared at him. What if she turns into one of those freaks and kills us all? We don't know if that's how this stuff works. Roxy shook her head. We do. News says it spreads through bodily fluids, bites, scratches, and then it takes over. The words hung in the air, heavy as lead. Tommy glanced at Kim, at the fear lurking in her eyes beneath the defiance. I think Layla's right. Roxy wrung her wrists. We have to contain this. No. They all turned as the Minks drummer stepped forward, his gravelly voice low but firm. We don't abandon bandmates on the road. Roxy glowered at him. But she might have it. Spike shrugged. And she might not. Tommy raised a hand. How about this? The back of your van's separate from the cabin, right? Roxy nodded. You mean like quarantine her in there? Exactly. It's gonna be a squeeze. Tommy jerked a thumb behind him. Split a few of your guys between the vans if you have to. Just keep Kim separate. Spike nodded. Yeah. Isolated, but not abandoned. Roxy let out a sigh. I guess we can keep an eye on her. Reassess once we know more. Without protest, Kim climbed into the back of the Furious Minks van, her eyes meeting Tommy's for a brief moment before the door slammed shut. Spike came over and seemed to force a smile. All right if I ride with you guys? Tommy nodded. Sure. They climbed back into their vehicles, engines rumbling to life. Tommy took a deep breath as he watched the Minks van pull away, Kim's face peering from the back window. Layla sat next to him, arms crossed. This is a mistake. You know what needs to be done, you're just too soft to do it. He bristled at her words. There's no need to be so extreme. Kim's still human. We owe it to her to at least try. Layla scoffed. She's not human anymore, and the longer we pretend she is, the more danger we're in. She turned to the window. Maybe Layla was right, but he couldn't accept it. Not yet. Mickey leaned between the seats and clapped a hand on his shoulder. You did good, man. We'll figure this out. He nodded, hoping Mickey was right. As Layla pulled away from the motel, Tommy couldn't shake the feeling that the hard choices were just beginning. Spike stared from the window, air whistling through his nose. He told them about Kim, how they'd grown up together, been best friends since grade school. If anyone had the right to an opinion here, it was him. What do you think, Spike? Tommy asked. About all this? Spike remained silent so long Tommy didn't think he'd respond. This whole thing is bullcrap. She's still Kim, still family. We don't turn our backs on family. Tommy let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. We can't abandon her when she needs us most. Layla's head whipped around. So that's it then? We just ignore the very real danger and pretend everything's fine? He held up a hand. No one's suggesting that, but we need to be smart, take precautions without being cruel. Layla opened her mouth to argue, but Mickey interrupted. Look, we're all on edge here. It's been a mess since the Gilman, but we've got to stick together or we don't stand a chance. Kim's one of us. We look out for our own. Layla sighed but didn't push back. An uneasy silence settled over the van as they continued down the deserted highway. All right, Tommy said. The best we can do is keep an eye on her condition. At the first sign things are taking a turn, we deal with it. You saw those eyes, right? That's how we'll know. Layla's lips pressed into a thin line, but she gave a curt nod. Over the next few hours, the atmosphere in the van was subdued. Tommy kept glancing in the side mirror, watching the Minks van following close behind. Kim was in there, alone and dealing with whatever was happening to her. Part of him wondered if they'd made the right choice. Were they helping her, or just delaying the inevitable? There were no easy answers anymore. All they could do was take it 1 mile at a time and hope they'd make the right turns. For the next hour or so, Tommy stared out the passenger window. his forehead creased with worry. In the back, Mickey jiggled his leg relentlessly, while Spike just sat there. Tommy wanted to say something to lighten the mood, but nothing came. Roxy flashed her van's lights. Layla slowed and pulled over to the shoulder. Mickey groaned. What now? They climbed out and gathered around the Minks van. Kim lay inside, looking paler than before. It's getting worse, Roxy said. She needs help. Help we can't give her, Layla said. We need to do something. A war raged in Tommy between sympathy and uncertainty. Let's give it a little more time. We can keep monitoring her, try to make her comfortable. Roxy narrowed her eyes. We need to do something. What if she attacks? We need to make the tough choice here. All eyes turned to Tommy. He took a deep breath. I'll keep an eye on her. Layla shot him a glare. You'll do what? We'll still isolate her in the van for now, but I'll stay back there too, keep an eye on things. He raised a hand to silence Layla's protest. It's the best compromise we've got. He looked down at his hunting knife. And if things take a turn? Chapter 12. Tommy climbed into the back of the van with Kim while the others returned to their vehicles. She gave him a smile, but her skin had a grayish pallor that turned his stomach. He tried to make small talk, to keep things light, but the specter of her worsening condition hung over them. They drove on through the day, his gaze switching between Kim's occasional dozing and the road retreating behind them. This whole zombie business had escalated so quickly. Just yesterday, their biggest concern was making it to their next gig on time. Now they were literally fighting for their lives. He glanced over at Kim. She was curled up on the floor, clutching her injured arm. Beads of sweat dotted her forehead even as she shivered. How are you holding up? She blinked up at him. Oh, just casually turning into a brain-eating monster. He laughed awkwardly. Really thought I'd at least make it to 30 before that happened. He gave a sad smile. Try to get some rest. I bet we'll be stopping soon to gas up and figure out our next move. Yeah. She closed her eyes, her head rocking in time with the van. They sat in silence for a long time, the stench of death cloying in the back of Tommy's throat. She stirred, her face tightening as she clutched her arm. The wound seemed more inflamed now, an angry red mark snaking its way up her forearm. You pissed me off when we first met, you know? Tommy frowned. Huh? That thing you said about me being a bassist because I'm a woman. Tommy blinked, taken aback. No, it's not like that. I was just thinking, some of the most kick-ass bassists I've ever known were named Kim. Kim Deal from the Pixies, Kim Gordon from Sonic Youth. Kims have a reputation, A corner of Kim's mouth twitched into a half smile. That's a relief. Thought you were going down the women should stick to bass route. No way. Tommy shook his head and grinned. There's Key, too. The pair laughed and Tommy opened his palms. That was a joke, by the way. I know. I'd never underestimate anyone based on anything like, especially in this scene. We're all fighters here. Good to know. For a moment, Tommy almost forgot the unspoken dread that occupied the back of the van. As Kim shifted, she winced, gripping her arm tighter, and Tommy felt his stomach churn. What if her condition worsened? What if she turned? What if she attacked? Tommy, Kim's voice broke through his spiraling thoughts. You're looking at me like I'm about to eat you. He forced a smile. Sorry, just a bit tense, It's all so crazy. Yeah. She looked down at her festering wound, her eyes closing. Crazy. Tommy leaned back and watched the broken landscape roll past, willing the miles to go by faster. The isolation and uncertainty were almost worse than the smell of Kim's wound. A sudden thump from the front of the van made him jump. Roxy's voice filtered through the window, separating them. Got trouble up ahead. Big accident. Cars overturned. There's crap everywhere. We're going to have to go around. As they slowed, hulking shapes of wrecked vehicles lined the highway. I'm telling the others we're going off-road. Hold tight. Gripping a strap that hung from the ceiling, Tommy braced himself. With a lurch, the van veered off the asphalt. His grip tightened as they jolted onto an unpaved road. Thumps and groans resonated from below as the wheels skidded over ruts and loose gravel. Trees blurred past the back window, their skeletal branches swiping at the sky. He clenched his jaw, fighting the rising tide of nausea. His stomach twisted, roiling with the sensation of being in a shaker. He didn't want to imagine how Kim felt. Amp stacks and drum cases slid across the floor. A guitar case teetered on a ledge. Just as it seemed about to fall, Tommy lunged forward, grappling it back into position. His hand brushed against Kim's leg. Instinctively, he recoiled. The virus, he couldn't afford to forget that even for a second. The van dipped suddenly, descending into what felt like a shallow ditch before jolting upwards again, tires finding purchase on the uneven terrain. Drumsticks and leads became airborne missiles. He threw himself over Kim, shielding her from the cascade of falling equipment. Cymbals clashed in dissonance, almost drowned out by the roar of the engine. Kim screamed. A high-pitched screech tore through the van as Roxy accelerated, metal scraping rock below them. The van burst out of the makeshift road, tires skimming over soft earth, and then back onto smooth asphalt. Geez. Kim was visibly shaken, her eyes darting back and forth. Are you all right? She nodded, wrapping her arms around herself as though hugging away the last few minutes. I think so. The van slowed, and Roxy's voice piped up again. We're back on track. How's everything back there? Tommy looked around at the chaotic mess of musical equipment, at Kim's ashen face, at his own trembling hands. We're still alive. Good. Let's keep it that way. A few minutes later, Roxy slammed the brakes. Tommy's head crashed into an amp while his posterior found itself nestled between some drums. The metallic taste of blood filled his mouth. Geez, Roxy, what's the big idea? Looks like the military or something. Damn it. Tommy rubbed the sore spot on his head. This can't be good. Understatement of the year, Kim mumbled, her voice barely audible. What do we do? Stay cool, I guess. We haven't done anything wrong. Right. Her voice quivered. No big deal. Exactly. Tommy turned to the front. Roxy, anything new? I think it's the National Guard. Peering through the back window, he saw the other vans in their convoy screech to a halt. Soldiers already aiming their rifles at them. He turned to Kim. You should probably hide. Without protest, Kim scrambled behind one of the larger amps, her face pale and terrified. Out of the vehicle, now! A stern-looking soldier tapped his rifle against the back window. Taking a deep breath, Tommy tried to keep his cool as he stepped out of the van. The tension weighed heavy. His heart thumped in his chest. Morning, officer. Tommy forced a smile. Nice weather for an apocalypse, huh? Cut the wisecracks, the soldier snapped. What are you doing here? Us. We're just some punk bands trying to get home. He gestured towards the vans. Had to cut the tour short. All right, punk, the soldier sneered, eyeing him like he was something he'd stepped in. Where are you lot from and what the hell are you doing out here? My lot are from Philly. Those lot are from Pittsburgh, and these guys, Columbus, Ohio. Tommy tried to keep his voice steady despite the icy grip of fear twisting his gut. You're in a rock band? Punk rock, yeah. Maybe you've heard of us? I'm from Crab vs. Lion. We've got Anarchy's Child and the Furious Minks, just made our debut at the Gilman. Never heard of any of you. His lip curled. And I don't care for your kind of noise anyway. You punks are all the same. Nothing but trouble. Tommy raised his hands. We're just making music. No, Billy Joel makes music. I wouldn't call screaming and smashing stuff music. Tommy shrugged. Guess it depends on what you're aiming for. Still doesn't answer what you're doing on the roads. There's a stay-at-home order in effect. And we're just trying to make it back home now. The soldier raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. To Philadelphia? Yep. And how are you planning to do that? Driving, mostly. He motioned towards the vans. Just follow the road and hope for the best, right? Hope won't get you far, kid. But I guess it's all you've got. Just remember, there are worse things out there than zombies. Thanks for the advice. The soldier looked Tommy up and down. You know, driving across country is a bad idea right now. Look, man, I just want to get back home. I need to get back to them. Uh-huh. And how do we know you're not infected? Tommy raised his hands in mock surrender. We've all got our problems, but turning into zombies ain't one of them. Keep your hands still, and don't try anything funny. We're not here to play games. Neither are we. Tommy held his voice steady. We just want to get back home safe to our families, same as you, I'm guessing. The soldier studied Tommy for a moment, his eyes searching. His gaze shifted to Mickey, slumped against the van. Hey man, don't worry about him. Tommy gestured to Mickey. He's not infected or anything, just going through some withdrawal. The soldier narrowed his eyes. What kind of withdrawal? Plez, Mickey said. But I'm kicking it. Fantastic. The soldier sneered, rolling his eyes. Just what we need, more junky scumbags to deal with. Hey, we're all just trying to survive here, Tommy said. The soldier shook his head at Mickey. Pathetic. Any chance you've got some methadone on you? Tommy asked. It'd sure make our journey a hell of a lot smoother. Sorry, kid, we're fresh out, the soldier said. Right, of course. Have any of your party been bitten? The soldier's eyes scanned their faces. Party? Tommy grinned at the others. This your idea of a party? The soldier raised his rifle. Answer the question. Have any of your group been infected? Bites, scratches, any sustained bodily contact? Tommy glanced towards the Minks van, praying the soldier wouldn't notice. I think we're all good. Hey Tommy, Zero called out, phone in hand, capturing the entire scene. Gotta document harassment like this, right? Tommy sighed. Zero, don't antagonize them. Hey, another soldier barked at Zero. Put that away and let us search your vehicle. Oh, no can do, buddy, Zero said. Fourth Amendment. You need a warrant or probable cause, and you've got neither. Are you really going to pull that card now? The first soldier snapped. Zero smirked. Damn straight I am. You know this is part of the globalists' plan, right? You even know who your true masters are? Look, another soldier said. You should all just go back to your homes. It's safer there. Do you think we're out here joyriding through Zombieville, USA because we like the scenery? Tommy said. We're trying to get home. Tommy, Roxy glared at him. Chill out, yeah? Right, Tommy agreed. Sorry, officer, it's been a rough couple of days. Understandable, the soldier's expression softened. But seriously, go home. Thanks, Tommy said through gritted teeth. The soldier leaned closer. I shouldn't be telling you this, but if you're looking for somewhere relatively secure, Lake Tahoe has been cleared. It's probably your best bet right now. Tommy nodded. Thanks for the tip. I'll let the others know. It's about as safe as anywhere can be these days, the soldier said before walking away. Tommy relayed the information as they returned to their vans. Great, a vacation spot, Roxy muttered. Maybe we'll find some jet skis and have a little fun while we're running from the zombies. Or maybe we'll find some peace and quiet, away from all this crap, Layla said. Either way, Tommy said, we've got to keep moving forward. All right, everyone back in the vans, Roxy said. We've got a long drive ahead and we're burning daylight. Damn pigs, Zero said. Always gotta flex their muscle even when the world's going to hell. Shut up, Zero, Layla said. Just be thankful we got through. They could have made things a lot more difficult for us. By what, trampling on our rights? You see that as a difficulty? Zero shot her a condescending look. Rights? You think this is the time to be having a debate on civil liberties? We're dealing with an apocalypse, for God's sake. Well, you never know when tyranny starts to sneak in, do you? Gotta keep an eye out, Zero said, raising an eyebrow. This is all part of the plan. Zero, in case you haven't noticed, we're slightly more concerned with zombies ripping us to shreds than some dystopian fantasy. Ah, the zombies, Zero sneered at the roadblock. The perfect distraction, aren't they? Keep the sheeple scared and they won't even notice their freedom slipping away. Layla blinked at him. Are you even listening to yourself? People are dying, Zero. We've probably lost friends, family. This is not some conspiracy theory. This is real life. And that makes it even more important to question the reality we're given, Layla. Layla took a deep breath. You know what, Zero? You're right. Let's just let anarchy reign while the world burns. Happy now. We're supposed to be punks, remember? He grinned and clapped his hands. Always had you lot down for a bunch of cosplayers. You know what I mean. Not everything has to be a battle against the man. Better than blind obedience. Right. Because anarchy has worked out so well for us so far. Before Zero could respond, Tommy stepped in. Guys, enough. We've got bigger problems. Like how we're going to survive the next few days. Zero shrugged and sauntered to join his bandmates. Spike from the Furious Minks approached Tommy as everyone shuffled back towards their respective vans. Hey man, thanks for looking out for Kim back there. Really appreciate it. Tommy nodded. Of course. We've got to stick together, don't we? Listen. A serious expression settled on Spike's face. Why don't we swap places for a bit? You've been running point with those soldiers and keeping things steady. I should be there for Kim. You sure? Yeah, be better having someone she knows with her, you know? Nothing personal. Of course, man. Do what you need to. I'll head back over to our van and you can join Kim. Cheers, Tommy. Means a lot. Take care of her. Tommy patted Spike's shoulder before making his way back towards the van. Tommy settled back into the passenger seat and smiled at Layla. Hey. Hey yourself. How's Kim? Not great. Spike's going to look out for her. Makes sense. She looked Tommy up and down. She didn't. I'm fine. You think she'll, you know. Tommy shrugged. We'll deal with that if and when it comes. He glanced back at Mickey, who managed a weak grin. The door slid open, and Jimbo from Anarchy's Child hopped in. Mind if I join the party? What are you doing here? Layla asked. Needed a break from Zero's crap, didn't I? Dude's doing my head in. Welcome aboard, Tommy said, offering a smile. Jimbo settled in, crossing his arms. So, Lake Tahoe, yeah? That's the plan, apparently. Soldiers say it's cleared out. Could be a safe haven for us. Or a trap, Mickey said. Either way, we've got to keep moving forward, Tommy said. We don't have many options left. All right, let's do this. Layla started the engine. Lake Tahoe, here we come. Chapter 13. Layla turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. Vibrations pulsed through Tommy's skull as he leaned back against the headrest. Behind him, Mickey stared from the window, his eyes vacant, his skin pale and slick with sweat. Tommy turned to him. You good? Mickey jolted, eyes darting around the van before settling back on the road. Yeah. Fine. In the side mirror, Tommy saw Roxy slam the back doors of their van shut, trapping Kim inside. She barked orders at the rest of the Minks, her expression twisting into a scowl. Tommy turned on the stereo, filling the van with the sounds of Rancid through the blown-out speakers. Mickey's fingers tapped against his thigh, still avoiding eye contact. Jimbo cracked open a can. Road trip, Layla revved the engine once more. In the side mirror, the other vans started to move. Layla pulled onto the street, leading the way. The van's engine hummed under Layla's steady hand, the wheels eating up mile after mile of uncertain road. Tommy's fingers drummed on the dashboard. Hey, lighten up, folks, Jimbo grinned. We're punks on tour, remember? He knocked back his beer. Next stop, Zombie Palooza. Mickey snorted, a sound more like a grimace than a laugh. Yeah, headlined by the undead, I suppose. Jimbo chuckled. Ah, they always kill it on stage. The word kill hung heavy in the air for a moment. So, how's the tour been for you lot? Jimbo leaned between the front seats, looking between Layla and Tommy. Any memorable gigs before the world decided to end? Had it only been yesterday that they'd played to a packed house at 924 Gilman Street? God, it felt like a lifetime ago. We've played some decent venues, Tommy said. Last single got us a lot of attention on some of the bigger sites. It's like people are starting to pay attention. Enjoy it, dude. That first push is the best. We're about to record our third album. Jimbo sighed. Mind you, with the way things were going, it was a coin toss whether we'd make it through as a band. Mickey inclined his head. Trouble at mill, huh? Jimbo shrugged, his gaze fixed somewhere on the van's peeling ceiling liner. Let's just say creative differences had turned into creative warfare, almost made the actual apocalypse seem like a good team-building exercise. He threw himself back into his seat. I don't want to keep doing retreads, you know? We need to rip it up, start again. Do what Fugazi did, really push the possibilities. Tommy raised an eyebrow. So, you're bored of punk? I'm bored of stock punk. I'm bored of all these wannabes who fall into some nicely structured rebellion. They're conformists, dude, and they don't even see it. They think they're punk, but they're still dressing like it's 1977. Punk's supposed to be more than just a label, more than just a framework you can slot yourself into. It's about breaking down the walls. So, what? You gonna start doing a post-punk thing or something? Throw in some jazz, a bit of beatboxing? Anything's better than rinse and repeat, you know, Layla sniffed. And let me guess, Zero's not into that? Jimbo shook his head. I tried playing him some other music, experimental stuff, electronica, shoegaze, grime. It's like, if it's not punk or hardcore, he doesn't want to know. He calls himself a purist, but it's falling back on the same old, same old. So limiting. Layla nodded. Well, if you survive this, you'll probably survive anything as a band. Survive? I plan to thrive, dude. Jimbo drummed his fingers on the back of Tommy's seat. First band to tour Post-apocalypse? Imagine the cred. Could launch a new type of punk rock. Call it zombiecore. Tommy grinned. Yeah, you could have some zombies growling on backing vocals. Jimbo chuckled. Yeah, probably have to keep them on leashes, though. Oh, crap, our backing guy's just bitten another kid on the front row. Urgh. Jimbo's laughter filled the van, brightening the gloom if only for a moment. They'd have to sign waivers to see us. That's real hardcore. Tommy nodded along to the music as the empty highway slid by. Abandoned cars lay scattered along the shoulders, some with doors ajar, others marred with dark stains. Mickey shifted in his seat, casting a glance Tommy's way. So what's the plan, once we hit Lake Tahoe? Tommy shrugged. Regroup. Get supplies. And then what? I don't know if you've noticed, but we're a long way from Philly. We need to take it one day at a time, man. We'll get there. We just need to keep focused on the now. A bitter laugh escaped Mickey. We're so screwed. Maybe. Tommy frowned. But we've got each other. We'll figure this out. Mickey shook his head, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. Tommy cranked up the volume, allowing Tim Armstrong's gritty vocals to drown out the uncertain future looming before them. He watched Mickey from the corner of his eye as they drove, taking in his twitchy movements. There was no doubt that withdrawal was hitting Mickey hard. Though he had his demons, he always came through for the band when it mattered. But if Mickey derailed now, they were all in trouble. Lila's phone rang and she pressed to answer. Yeah? Hey you. A gravelly voice came through the van's speakers. Layla smiled at Tommy. It's D. Damn right it's D. How you guys holding up in there? Oh, living the dream, as always. You know me, cool as a cucumber. D laughed. I'll believe that when I see it. We've got to do something to lighten the mood around here. I'm starting a game of I Spy. Roxy's already playing along. Sure, knock yourself out. All right, I spy with my little eye something beginning with S. Layla looked down at her hands. Steering wheel? Nope. Try again. Tommy smirked and scanned the area. Sky? Getting warmer, but no cigar. Mickey blinked and glanced around the van. Something. Dee burst out laughing over the speakers. That's almost too clever. But no, it's not something. I mean, it is something. But it's not the word something. So it is something? Mickey asked. Yeah, it's something, but it's not something something. Layla snorted. I'm confused. Tommy glanced back at Mickey and grinned. We all are. All right, my turn, said Jimbo, leaning between the seats. Is it a sentient sausage? What? Layla almost swerved the van. Tommy chuckled. Jimbo, what kind of world do you live in, man? A world where sentient sausages could absolutely be a thing, given everything else that's going on. I mean, you're completely fine with zombies shambling among us, but the idea that a sausage might have an opinion about the drapes is somehow odd to you? Mickey laughed. I mean, Dee hasn't said it's not. It's not, Dee said, but his logic is flawless. Tommy gazed from the window. Is stereo? Nope. Layla sighed. Just tell us what it is, Dee. I'm bored now. A street lamp, Dee said. But I've got to say, the sentient sausage was a close second. Thanks for the distraction. Speak soon. Layla ended the call and Rancid came back through the speakers, the laughter subsiding as a blood-soaked zombie staggered into the road ahead. Layla slammed her foot on the brake pedal, the van screeching to a halt just inches from the thing. The zombie let out a guttural moan and lurched towards them, its fingers clawing at the windshield. Tommy grabbed his guitar from the back, shoved the door open, and leapt outside. He swung with all his might, bashing the zombie's head in, with a sickening crunch. Dark blood and brain matter splattered across the asphalt. Layla jumped out and smashed the zombie off the road with her baseball bat. Tommy turned to Layla. You good? I'm good. Why aren't you using your bat? Tommy glanced down at his guitar and flicked gore off its body. I forgot. Old habits? She nodded, breathing hard. Barely scratched the paint at least. Lucky. Yeah, real lucky. He peered down the highway, spotting more zombies in the distance. They needed to get moving. Layla fired up the engine and Tommy hopped back inside, grabbing a rag to wipe his hands. Mickey groaned, pressing his forehead against the window. Wow, Jimbo said. You two make zombie slaying look like a punk show. Headbanging has never been so literal. Layla chuckled. You didn't fancy joining in the melee? Jimbo raised his eyebrows. You see, I was providing moral support. Very important, that is. Someone has to be the cheerleader, and I was waving my metaphorical pom-poms from the back seat. Tommy grinned. Pom-poms, huh? I didn't know you were so multi-talented. Maybe when this thing's over, we can have you as a dancer at Zombie Palooza. Jimbo sucked his teeth. Don't underestimate the power of morale in the apocalypse. Also, someone had to keep an eye on Mickey here. Make sure he didn't make a meal for our dead friend. Mickey groaned, but managed a weak smile. You're too kind. Jimbo nodded. I'm selfless like that. You go out, smash some zombie skulls, and I make sure the home front is secure. Tommy glanced at Mickey, his face a pallid mask. Here. Tommy fished an unopened bottle of water out and handed it back to him. Stay hydrated, man. Mickey took a few sips and leaned back, closing his eyes. Layla's phone interrupted the music. Who is it? It's Roxy. Tommy gestured to the screen. Probably checking we haven't been zombified, Layla said. Tommy answered the call. Hey, Rox, what's up? You've got to stop getting out every time there's a deadhead in the way. We'll never make it to Tahoe at this rate. Layla narrowed her eyes, her jaw twitching. Tommy shifted in his seat. How's Kim? She's still with us. Spike doing okay? Yep. All right then. Layla slammed the brakes again. Up ahead, Zero stood at the roadside, his phone aimed at a pack of zombies tearing into a corpse. Layla leaned forward, her mouth gaping. What the hell's he doing? Before Tommy could stop her, she jumped out and stormed over to him. Tommy grabbed his guitar and caught up to her. You got a death wish, dumbass? Layla snatched Zero's phone away. Zero shrugged. Thought the footage might be useful. Useful for what? Tommy snapped. Freaking TikTok? Zero didn't respond. After a silent stare down, Zero swiped his phone, climbed back into his van, and took off. Layla and Tommy exchanged frustrated looks. Tommy slid back into the passenger seat, his nerves on edge. Jimbo leaned forward. Zero, ever the aspiring filmmaker. Probably thinks he's going to make zombies go viral. Again. Tommy shook his head. Going viral isn't much use if you get eaten. It's pointless and dangerous. Jimbo grinned. Well, you've got to admit, if it gives Zero something productive to do, then it can't be all bad. The last thing any of us want is for Zero to get bored and start thinking. Thinking about what? Layla asked as she shifted gears. Connecting dots. Jimbo made exaggerated air quotes. But not just any dots, mind you. These are the kinds of dots that only Zero can see. The flimsiest of details becoming a full-fledged conspiracy theory. Tommy laughed. Oh, so you think he's cooking up some kind of story in that brain of his? You bet. Probably something to do with the globalists, or chemtrails, or how the zombies are actually a false flag operation set up by Big Pharma to bring in martial law. The guy's a gold mine of bullcrap. Tommy frowned. I didn't know you could mine bullcrap. Jimbo sat back and gazed from the window. You'd be surprised what crap you can dig up if you know where to look. Still though, Tommy said, someone needs to keep an eye on him before he gets us all killed for the sake of his art. He watched Zero's van in the side mirror. We can't afford to take stupid risks. Jimbo sighed. It's a far cry from worrying about who drank the last beer in the dressing room, eh? Layla laughed. Yeah, those were the days. As they sped down the road, Tommy tried to call Neve, but couldn't connect to the network. Layla reached over and gave his hand a squeeze. We're gonna make it. Tommy nodded. I hope you're right. There's no hope about it. We're gonna make it. From the back seat, Mickey groaned. Tommy met his eyes. Hey man, you doing okay? Been better. Mickey seemed to force a smile. Got any plez on you? Layla shot Mickey a look. You know, we don't. Yeah, well, maybe you should start. Layla's phone rang. It's Dee, Tommy answered. Yeah? Knock knock. Huh? Knock knock. Tommy frowned. What are you talking about, Dee? Who's there? Layla said, her tone flat. Zombies. Zombies who? Zombies gonna eat your brains if you don't drive faster. Dee cackled and ended the call. Layla and Tommy both shook their heads. Jimbo leaned forward from the back seat. Well, that was crap. Didn't even make sense. He raised a finger. Knock knock. Layla rolled her eyes. Who's there? Zombie Chew. Zombie Chew who? Tommy asked. Zombie chewed my arm off, but I'm all right now. Got a spare one in the back. Layla's brow furrowed. That's worse than Dee's. Wait, I've got another. Knock knock. Tommy groaned. Who's there? Dead. Dead who? Dead tired of all these zombies. Anyone up for a nap? Mickey gave a brief chuckle. Layla shook her head. Don't encourage him, Mickey. The shimmering blue waters of Lake Tahoe eventually came into view, stretching out to the horizon. For a brief moment, all Tommy's worries seemed to fade away. The lake was untouched, pristine. Part of him wanted to pretend just for a second that everything was normal, that they were a band on a road trip, taking in the natural beauty of the high Sierras. No zombies, no chaos, no constant gnawing fear that every moment might be their last. But the images flashing by the van's windows, reflected in the side mirror, made the harsh reality impossible to ignore. Overturned cars, shattered storefronts, dried blood staining the broken asphalt. He glanced over at Layla. Her dark eyes were fixed on the road ahead. Wordlessly, he reached over and put his hand on Layla's shoulder. She met his eyes and gave a slight nod. The van shuddered to a stop. Tommy peered through the grimy window at the still waters of Lake Tahoe, glimmering under the setting sun. A sheen of sweat coated his skin. He prodded Mickey's knee. We're here, man. You coming? Mickey wiped a shaky hand across his forehead. Nah, I'll catch up. With a sigh, Tommy slid open the van door. The fresh air hit him like a punch in the face. He took a deep breath, the scent of pine doing little to hide the stench from his armpits. Layla and Jimbo stood lakeside, gazing across the water. Tommy's boots crunched on the gravel shore as he approached. It's so calm, Layla said, like nothing's changed. Do you reckon zombies can swim? Jimbo squinted, as if expecting one to pop out of the water at any moment. Tommy glanced at Layla, then shrugged. I doubt it. Most can barely walk straight, let alone perform the breaststroke. Jimbo chuckled. Right, but what if they just sort of sunk to the bottom and did a zombie walk along the lake bed? That's... Layla paused. Actually, not a bad question. Dude, think about it. If they're supposed to be undead, why would they need oxygen? I've seen some of these things climb fences, Tommy said, so it wouldn't surprise me if they adapted somehow. But are they adapting? Layla asked. Or are they just operating on some kind of instinct? Tommy pondered this for a moment. It seems more like instinct. If they were sentient, we'd be in much deeper trouble than we already are. Jimbo nodded. Do we think there's any sort of, cure? Or a way to recover someone who's been zombified? Layla sighed. I think that's beyond our capacity to answer. We're musicians, not scientists. Yeah, but think about it, Jimbo said. What if the solution is musical? What if we find out that a specific chord or rhythm can snap them out of it? Tommy laughed. A resurrection by rock theory, huh? Exactly. Jimbo's grin fell. But it raises questions, you know? Tommy frowned. What do you mean? Jimbo's shoulder jerked. Like if they find a cure and, we've maybe smashed in a few hundred zombie skulls. What's that make us? Tommy's jaw tightened. This wasn't a question he was willing to dwell upon. It makes us survivors. Chapter 14. Roxy and Zero's van sputtered to a stop. Lake Tahoe stretched out before them, its surface a mirror reflecting the early evening sky. One by one, the members of the Furious Minks and Anarchy's Child climbed out of their vans. Tommy, Layla, Jimbo, and Mickey were joined by Roxy, Dee, Zero, and Nix. Look at this view, Roxy said. Isn't it something? Spike climbed down from the back of the Minks van, his face pale, and headed over to join the group. How's Kim? Tommy asked. She's in a bad way, but she hasn't turned yet. Christ, it reeked in there. Dee stretched his legs and rubbed his backside, flashing a grin. I've lost all feeling in my ass sitting for so long. Jimbo spread his arms wide as if embracing the landscape. This would be a stellar location for Zombie Palooza. Can you imagine? A punk festival right here? Zero snorted. Doesn't surprise me it's so quiet here. Probably the globalists using the zombie virus to clear out the cities. Ever heard of the Georgia Guidestones? It's all there. Nix shook his head at Zero. Always chasing ghosts. Got no time for that crap now. We need to find a safe spot to sleep and figure out how to get supplies. Tommy nodded at Nix. He's got a point. As fascinating as it would be to talk about Zombie Palooza or globalist agendas, we've got immediate issues to handle. Lila pursed her lips, her gaze meeting each of theirs in turn. We're all tired, we're all stressed, but we've got each other, and right now that's what counts. Roxy chuckled. Look at us, getting all sentimental by the lakeside. Who would have thought? She skimmed a stone across the lake's surface, ripples spreading out in concentric circles, disrupting the stillness. Layla sidled up to Tommy. It's getting dark. We need to find somewhere to stay. Tommy consulted the map. There's a campsite not too far from here. We can make it before nightfall if we haul ass. Tommy turned to check on Mickey. He stood slumped against the van, his forehead dripping with sweat. His skin had taken on a grayish pallor that set Tommy's nerves on edge. Mick, you good? Mickey flinched at Tommy's voice and made a weak smile. Yeah, just needed a quick break. I'll be right behind you. Tommy clapped his hand. All right, let's move out, people. We're almost there. The others drifted back towards their vans. Tommy paused by Mickey on his way to the driver's seat. You sure you're good to go, man? Mickey avoided his eyes. Yeah, like I said, right behind you. Tommy studied him for another moment, then climbed behind the wheel. He turned the key in the ignition, and the van rumbled to life. Layla sank onto the passenger seat as Jimbo clambered into the back. Tommy tapped on the steering wheel as Mickey remained standing outside, leaning on the van. Killing the engine, Tommy hopped out and crossed over to Mickey. Mick, time to go, brother. No response. He grabbed Mickey's shoulder and gave him a shake. Mickey. Mickey's eyes fluttered open, glazed, and unfocused. Huh. Oh, yeah, I'm coming. As Mickey fumbled for the door handle, his legs gave out. Tommy caught him before he face-planted the asphalt. Whoa, 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 easy there. Sliding Mickey's arm over his shoulder, he supported most of his weight as he guided him to the van. Layla opened the side door, concern etched on her brow as she helped Mickey inside. What's wrong with him now? Just the withdrawal. Let's get moving. We'll figure this out on the road. Layla nodded and slid the door closed once Mickey was settled. Tommy jumped back behind the wheel, his pulse quickening as he calculated the dwindling daylight against the distance remaining. Foot on the gas pedal, the van rolled out. Tommy kept his eyes locked on the road while the van tore down the empty highway, the sky darkening. Beside him, Layla fidgeted with the radio, static cut in and out between bursts of faint classical music. Tommy's grip on the steering wheel tightened, his pulse a rapid drumbeat. After a few long minutes, the van's tires crunched on gravel as Tommy pulled into the lakeside campground. He cut the engine, letting the sudden silence fill the air. He swept his gaze across the clearing framed by towering pines and the glassy lake beyond. No signs of life, nor of death. So far, so good. He gestured to Mickey, slumped in the back seat. Let's get him out first. Careful though, go slow. Together, he and Layla eased Mickey from the van. Tommy exchanged a worried look with Layla as they half-carried, half-dragged Mickey towards the fire pit. Once they had Mickey settled, Layla kept watch over him. Roxy hopped out of her van, stretching her arms overhead. How's it looking? Tommy hesitated. Not great, Mickey's really out of it. Roxy glanced over at Layla, who was crouched next to Mickey's inert form. Is it, you know? Withdrawal. Damn. You've got to keep an eye on him. Could get bad quick. The bassist in our old band got into Plez. Let's just say it didn't end well. Tommy swallowed hard and nodded. Shadows stretched long across the ground. And what about your current one? Roxy glanced towards the van and shrugged. Not checked since we last stopped. She shook her head. I don't know, man. We're getting like Spinal Tap with drummers. Tommy laughed despite himself. He spun at the sound of boots crunching on gravel behind him. Jimbo ambled over, guitar case slung across his back. Who wants to go for a swim? A half smile almost formed on Tommy's face, but his gaze involuntarily shifted back to Mickey. Jimbo followed the line of sight, his own smile dimming. He's not doing so hot, huh? No. Tommy exhaled. Setting his guitar aside, Jimbo placed a hand on Tommy's shoulder. He'll get through this. We'll make sure of it, yeah? For a long moment, they stood together in silence, the dying rays of the setting sun casting its glow through the trees. All right, enough moping. We need to lighten the atmosphere around here. Jimbo cupped his hands around his mouth. Who wants to help me set up the first annual Zombie Palooza? Layla let out a laugh. Tommy found himself chuckling too. I'm in, Dee called out, springing to his feet from his spot by the water's edge. Layla rolled her eyes. You're ridiculous, both of you. Oh, come on, it'll be fun. Jimbo swung his guitar back over his shoulder. We've got an entire lakefront stage here. I'm envisioning pyrotechnics, perhaps some hydraulic lifts. Screw punk rock, man. We can be like Kiss. Tommy shook his head, a quiet laugh escaping his lips. Even Zero managed a rare grin. Chapter 15. As the sun dipped below the trees, Tommy turned to the others. Let's get a fire started. Nix, can you take first watch? Sure thing. As Jimbo and Zero dragged logs over to the fire pit, Layla scrounged up some kindling. The ensuing crackle and warmth of the flames loosened the tension knotting Tommy's shoulders. They passed around cans of lukewarm beans, eating without conversation. After they finished, Tommy took over the watch, keeping his bat close at hand. One by one, the others' breaths transitioned from wakefulness to sleep as they nestled into their sleeping bags near the fire. Tommy's eyes remained fixed on the dark outline of the forest, his ears straining for any telltale sounds. A distant howl sliced through the silence, jolting him upright, his hands gripping his bat. He strained his eyes, trying to pierce the inky blackness that enveloped their makeshift camp. The howl echoed again, this time from a different direction. Were they wolves, coyotes, or something far worse? He debated waking the others, but they needed their rest, and raising a false alarm could only serve to deplete and demoralize them further. He paced the perimeter of their camp, scrutinizing the darkness for any signs of movement. A twig snapped in the trees to his left and he whirled around. A minute stretched out in tense silence. A groan reverberated from the woods. No animal produced a sound like that. Guys, up now! Mickey sprang to life, scrambling to his feet, while the others roused, bleary and disoriented. We've got company. Zero nodded, marching off with his rifle at the ready. I told you we couldn't trust those pigs. Tommy took his position, facing the narrow path that led up to their camp. Quiet descended upon them. Even the nocturnal choir of crickets and frogs had ceased their noise. The sound of shifting debris came through the trees. Steeling himself, Tommy tightened his grip on the bat, ready to swing at the first hint of movement. His muscles coiled, ready to strike as a zombie staggered from the trees. Its eyes, milky and vacant, locked onto him. It emitted a guttural moan as it shambled forward. With a surge of adrenaline, Tommy swung his bat, the impact resonating with a sickening crack against the zombie's skull. It crumpled to the ground, lifeless once more. 2 more burst from the trees. Zombies! Tommy's call echoed around him, his nerves tingling with adrenaline. He swung again, catching another undead square in the face, sending it careening into a bush. His comrades were on their feet now, hastily arming themselves. Lila, wielding a tire iron, joined Tommy in the fray, each swing a brutal dance. Behind them, Dee wielded a tree branch like a makeshift spear, dispatching a zombie with precision strikes to the ear or neck. "Tommy, on your left!" Tommy swiveled at Layla's warning, narrowly avoiding the snapping jaws of another assailant. A swift, brutal strike to its knees brought it down, allowing Layla to deliver the coup de grace to its skull. Gunshots cracked from high in a tree as Zero took out a dozen zombies with his rifle. They stood waiting, but only silence came. Tommy's breaths came thick and fast, his chest heaving. "Is that all of them?" Layla scanned the darkness. "I don't know." Zero let off another gunshot, and the forest fell silent again. "We're clear." After several minutes of tense vigilance, it appeared they had weathered the onslaught. They had survived. But remaining in this vulnerable position was out of the question. "We should get moving," Layla said. "No telling if more are coming, so let's get as far away from here as possible." "Agreed," Tommy said. "Let's grab what we can and get going. Any suggestions on where we head next?" "Let's just pick a direction and keep going," Dee said. "We'll find something, surely." "Dee's right," Tommy said. "We head east, along the highway. We keep our eyes peeled for shelter and supplies. We'll get through this, one day at a time." Nods and muted agreements followed his statement. As they prepared to move, Tommy locked eyes with Roxy, who offered a weak smile. Bat slung over his shoulder, Tommy cast a final glance at the scattered dead they were leaving behind. Then it came. A low, mournful groan. Everyone froze, their eyes meeting in shared alarm. The groan sounded again, undeniably closer. Grabbing a torch, Tommy gestured for Zero to accompany him. With a grunt of irritation, Zero followed as Tommy moved along a game trail. Sweeping the torch beam from side to side, Tommy sought the origin of the noise. A glint in the distance caught his attention. His body tensed, ready for flight. Torchlight shone into a pair of eyes. Tommy stared at those glowing eyes in frozen silence. "Just Bambi having a freak-out," Zero said, his voice tinged with nervous relief as the animal bolted through the trees. Whatever had alarmed that deer was still potentially lurking in the shadows. "Let's head back." Tommy met Zero's eyes. "You sure it's clear?" "Pig said it was clear, right? So it must be clear." Tommy held up his hands. "What else did we have to go on? For all we know, he could have been telling the truth. More likely leading us into a trap. Not everything's a conspiracy, you know." Zero sniffed. "No, you're right. We should do exactly what the man tells us all the time." "That's not what I said." "Nah, it's fine. You're one of the sheeple. I get that. Takes a while to undo globalist programming. You need to take the red pill, man." Tommy sighed. "Because this reality's so amazing? Did you even watch The Matrix?" "Yeah, I watched it. Predictive programming, that's why we fight. That's why we have to resist every single goddamn day." Tommy swept his torch beam through the trees. "Maybe you're right, but we need to get back to the others. Just need to make sure it's clear of those things." "Yeah, it's clear." Zero stomped off ahead. "We're good." As they returned to the campsite, all eyes turned towards them. "What was it?" Layla asked. "Just a freaked out deer," Tommy said. "Nothing to worry about." "You sure about that, Tommy?" Roxy said. "Looks like you two saw a ghost out there." "Honestly?" Tommy shrugged. "I think that deer was running from something. Don't know what it was, but..." His voice trailed off. Silence enveloped the group, the weight of his words settling in. "So what's the plan then?" Mickey asked. "We can't just sit here waiting for whatever's out there to find us." "You're right." Tommy took a deep breath and turned to the others. "All right, everyone, listen up. We need to move now. It's not safe here anymore." Murmurs of assent rippled through the group. "Let's gather our things quickly and quietly. We'll head east on the highway like we planned. see if we can find shelter in one of the small towns on the way. The campsite erupted into motion as everyone packed up their belongings. Sleeping bags were rolled, scattered cans collected, and bags stuffed into the vans. All the while, Tommy kept his baseball bat gripped tightly, his eyes and ears strained for signs of another attack. Within a few minutes, they had loaded the last of their supplies. Tommy did a final sweep of the darkened trees surrounding them before gesturing to the group. "All right, let's move out." He climbed into the driver's seat, his fingers tapping on the cracking vinyl steering wheel as the others filed in. Layla took the passenger seat next to him and squeezed his arm. Tommy turned the key in the ignition, and the van rumbled to life. Headlights glowed in the side mirror as the other vehicles lined up behind Tommy. He took one last deep breath, then pulled the van onto the deserted rural highway, the velvet blackness of the woods enveloping them on both sides. An air of uneasy anticipation settled over the van as they drove onward into the unknown night. Chapter 16. For the first hour, they passed only dark, abandoned towns. Tommy kept the speed slow, wary of crashed cars or other hazards lurking on the road. His head throbbed, but he tried to ignore it, focused only on getting them as far away from Lake Tahoe as possible. Around the 2-hour mark, the pain was becoming hard to disregard. Beads of sweat dotted his forehead despite the chill air blowing through the open windows. Layla stirred and eyed him. "You need a break?" "No, I'm good." "Bullcrap, you look like you're about to pass out. Let me drive for a while." With a resigned sigh, he eased the van to the roadside and swapped seats with Layla. As Layla pulled the van back onto the road, Tommy struggled to keep his eyes open. Despite his best efforts, he soon slipped into restless sleep, punctuated by vivid nightmares of reaching zombie hands and milky eyes peering from the darkness. A few hours later, Tommy jolted awake with a gasp, momentarily disoriented. The van was no longer moving. He peered from the window. They were parked at an abandoned gas station. The others stood by the pumps, keeping watch with weapons ready as Dee attempted to get the fuel flowing. Tommy opened the van door, feeling somewhat recovered after his rest. He walked over to where Layla stood watching the tree line. "Any signs of trouble?" She shook her head. "All quiet. Ran into a bit of luck. These pumps still work. Once we fuel up, we should be good to keep moving." While the others filled gas cans to take with them, Tommy stepped into the small station shop in search of supplies. The place had been looted, shelves picked clean. But after rummaging around behind the counter, he unearthed a forgotten box of protein bars. It wasn't much, but every little bit helped. Back on the road, Layla once again took the driver's seat. "Get some more rest." Tommy didn't argue. As they continued their eastward journey, he alternated between fitful dozing and staring out the window at the empty, unlit towns they passed. The first faint glow of dawn broke across the horizon when Tommy awoke again. Layla looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes as she drove on through the gray morning light. "Hey, let me take over for a while," Tommy said. "You need a break." Layla pulled over and they changed places. The sun continued to rise as they drove, revealing a landscape still devoid of any signs of life. After a while, a supermarket loomed ahead of them. Tommy signaled for the others to stop. Layla stirred. "What's going on?" "Supermarket." He pulled into the parking lot. "Let's get stocked up." Killing the engine, Tommy turned to Mickey and Jimbo in the back. "Grab anything you can use as a weapon. We do this quick and quiet, get what we need and get gone. No unnecessary risks." They nodded. Tommy picked up his baseball bat, feeling the comforting solidity of it. His eyes met Mickey's, who was slouched on the back seat. "You gonna be okay staying here?" Mickey bit down on his bottom lip. "If it's all the same, I'm coming with you." Tommy nodded. "All right, just take care, yeah?" Taking a deep breath, he turned to Layla. "Time to go." The door creaked open, and Layla stepped out. Tommy followed, stretching his back. Mickey stumbled out from the back seat, Jimbo following close behind. From the other vans, more of them emerged. Roxy climbed out and gazed at the supermarket's entrance. Zero, his rifle slung across his back, scanned the deserted parking lot, his jaw set tight. Dee popped out next, followed by Nix wielding a fire axe. Spike staggered out from the back of the Minks van, his features drawn. The group converged, casting wary glances at the supermarket. For a moment, no one spoke. Tommy broke the silence. Seems quiet, but I'm not sure what we'll find in there. Could be trouble. Stay sharp. Nods and quiet murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. Tommy pointed his bat towards the dark maw of the supermarket's entrance. Let's go in quiet. Stay together. Grab essentials only. Food, meds, batteries, no unnecessary noise. He approached the front doors ahead of the others, alert for any sound or sudden movement. Damn it. It's locked. With a deep breath, Zero shot off the lock and kicked open the door. Tommy tensed, expecting an ambush, but the place was still and silent. Zero swept inside, his rifle aimed and ready. Clear. Tommy stepped inside, sweeping his flashlight beam over chaotic aisles. Shelves lay tipped and ransacked, contents strewn across the tiled floor. The beam glinted off shattered glass and debris as he moved deeper into the cavernous interior. He motioned for the others to follow. Layla and Roxy broke right, while Dee and Spike went left. Nix and Mickey followed Tommy down the center aisles, while Zero remained on guard, near the door. Only their muted footsteps and the buzzing of freezers filled the air. They gathered what intact supplies remained, stuffing them into backpacks and duffel bags. Tommy remained on high alert, his bat clenched tight. Each small noise made him flinch, a pill bottle rattling across the floor, glass crunching underfoot. As Nix rifled through the health section, Tommy kept watch at the end of the aisle. A hint of movement caught his eye. He jerked the light towards it. Only a dangling strip of plastic. He signaled for Mickey and Nix to hurry up. Regrouping in the central aisle, they compared hauls in hushed tones. It was more than they could have hoped for, enough to sustain them for several days if rationed. Let's round up the others and get the hell out of here. They jogged towards the rear of the store. Tommy's shoe skidded on something, almost sending him flying. A dark puddle shimmered under his flashlight. Blood. Tommy's throat went dry. He swept his beam to the left, revealing more thick pools of it trailing off into the shadows. Guys, we need to go. What's up? Dee asked. Tommy shone his torch at the blood. Dee inclined his head. That looks pretty fresh. Could be from the meat section. A crash reverberated through the store. Tommy spun around and aimed his flashlight towards the noise. Dudes! Jimbo called. Deadheads! Moaning and dragging footsteps echoed around them. From the depths of the stockroom, a shuffling horde of zombies emerged. Grabbing a can of peas, Tommy hurled it at the nearest one. Looks like dinner's served, you ugly mothers. The can struck the leading zombie squarely between its milky eyes, causing it to stagger back, its arms flailing. Jimbo laughed and seized a can of beans, lobbing it into the horde. It bounced off a zombie's forehead with a hollow thunk. As more zombies shuffled forward, Layla took up her tire iron, cracking skulls with precision. Tommy grabbed a nearby shopping cart, rushing forward, and plowing into the crowd of undead, sending bodies flying. Roxy leapt forward, wielding a broken wine bottle, stabbing, slashing. From the hardware section, Zero revved up a chainsaw. The machine's roar drowned out the moans of the advancing zombies. This solo's going to bring the house down, Zero charged forward. The whirring blades made quick work of necks and limbs. Severed body parts flew through the air, trailing arcs of blood. Without a word, Mickey charged forward, brandishing a frozen turkey. One tried to grab his arm, but Mickey shook it off and swung the turkey, sending the zombie sprawling as Layla finished it off with her tire iron. Having fun over there? Tommy asked. Mickey grinned. Just keeping the beat, bro. Behind you. Starting at Tommy's warning, Mickey swung the turkey into the zombie's torso with all his might, sending it crashing into two others. Zero jumped in to finish the job with his chainsaw. In the distance, Dee's laughter echoed from the freezer aisle. Tommy jogged over as Dee slammed a freezer door shut, muffled groans emanating from within as zombies pounded against the metal. Chill out in there, you rotting freaks. Tommy shook his head. What the hell are you doing, Dee? Just having a bit of fun, Tommy boy. Lured him in here with a trail of steaks. Hansel and Gretel style. Worked like a charm. Through the small windows, Tommy saw at least 6 undead faces leering back at him, snapping jaws biting at empty air. "There's more," Spike yelled. Layla and Mickey took positions on either side of the entrance, their weapons at the ready. Tommy glanced at the baby products, a pang of sadness hitting him. Bottles, nappies, tiny clothes, all reminders of the normal life he used to have. Of his son Sean and his girlfriend Neve, waiting for him back home in Philadelphia. Were they even still alive? He closed his eyes, picturing Sean's chubby face, his giggle as he bounced him on his knee, the smell of baby shampoo in his soft hair. No, he couldn't think about them now. He had to stay focused. Tommy turned to the others. "Spike, Roxy, take either side of that aisle. Get ready to flank whatever's back there." They moved into position without argument. "Zero, you're with me. We'll go straight down the center, move fast and quiet." Zero revved his chainsaw and grinned. "Let's rock." The groans grew louder. Another moan. This one closer. Tommy clicked on his flashlight. The beam illuminated a pack of zombies feasting on one of their own. One looked up, its mouth dripping with blood, and snarled, alerting the others to their presence. Before the zombies had time to stand, Zero charged forward, his chainsaw roaring as it carved up a zombie's skull, spraying blood and flesh. Tommy swung his bat wildly, splitting a zombie's skull open, spewing rotten brain matter across the freezer cabinets. Jimbo struck out with a frying pan, each hit striking a hollow clang. Spike and Roxy appeared, stabbing and slashing with frenzied intensity. But more zombies came. "Fall back," Tommy shouted. The zombies pursued them mindlessly. Layla wielded her tire iron with lethal grace, felling zombie after zombie. Dee spilled a bottle of olive oil across the floor, causing zombies to slip and stumble. Zero shoved past, cutting the fallen zombies with his chainsaw. More zombies staggered towards them. Tommy ripped a metal bar off a shelf and swung it at the nearest zombie, its skull caving in with a thick crunch. Layla grabbed a jar of salsa and smashed it over another zombie's head. Red chunks of tomato splattered everywhere. Mickey ran by wielding his frozen turkey, yelling incoherently. Tommy bashed and crunched his way through the mob, splintering bone and pulping rotted flesh. Swinging his bat in a wide arc, he cracked 3 zombie skulls in quick succession, their bodies crumpling to the floor. Layla grabbed a fire extinguisher off the wall. As a zombie lunged at her, she pressed the lever, blasting it point blank with freezing vapor. The zombie recoiled, its face coated in frost. She slammed the canister down on the zombie's head, driving it to the ground. Tommy sprinted towards a row of propane tanks, banging on the metal shelves to lure the remaining zombies. They shuffled after him in a mindless herd. He grabbed a cloth from a nearby shelf and stuffed it into a tank's nozzle. Mickey tossed him a lighter. With shaking hands, Tommy flicked it on and held the flame to the cloth. "Get to the front door. Now." He waited for the zombies to get closer before turning to run. The tank exploded just as he dove through the entrance, the concussive force knocking him off his feet. He hit the ground hard as flames erupted behind him, swallowing the store and the zombies within it. His ears rang from the deafening blast. As the smoke cleared, silence fell over the parking lot. Mickey helped him up, clapping a hand on his shoulder. "Nice work, boss." Tommy nodded, adrenaline still pumping through his veins. Layla gestured to the doors. "Did anyone actually grab any food before blowing up the damn supermarket?" "I did," Dee said. "But, I used it as zombie bait." Man, that was intense. Jimbo tossed his dented frying pan aside. "But we kicked their rotten asses." "Hell yeah, we did," Dee said, giving Jimbo a high five. Tommy did a quick head count. They'd all made it somehow. Spike gave a thumbs up from the entrance. "All good. No stragglers." "Then let's get the hell out of here," Layla said, "before more show up." They trudged away from the burning supermarket, the acrid smoke stinging their eyes. Tommy's ears still rang from the explosion, muffling the distant crackle of flames. Layla coughed and waved her hand in front of her face. "So much for picking up supplies. Now what?" Tommy shook his head, trying to clear the haze clouding his thoughts. "We keep moving. Find a safe place to hunker down before nightfall." Beside him, Mickey shuffled. Man, that blast fried my last nerve. I need a fix bad. Tommy gripped Mickey's shoulder, locking eyes with him. Not now, Mickey. You've got to stay sharp. Mickey yanked his shoulder away. You don't get it, man. I can't just turn this off. Hey, cool it, you two. Layla eyed them both, her lip curled. We've got bigger problems, you know. Mickey sniffed and marched back towards the van. Layla lit a cigarette with shaking hands. That was too close. Tommy nodded, rubbing his eyes. The grisly scenes from the supermarket kept flashing through his mind, refusing to fade away. Taking a deep breath, he turned to help as Spike and the others began unloading their haul. They'd scraped together a better stash than he'd initially thought. Bags stuffed with canned foods and medical supplies. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Layla joined them and started sorting through it all, dividing the rations between the three groups. You should eat something. She handed Tommy a can of peaches. You haven't had anything since yesterday. Tommy shook his head. I'm fine. Save it for the others. But Layla set the can down and narrowed her eyes. Tommy, you need to keep your strength up. We need you at your best right now. Managing a tired smile, he accepted the offered can. All right, but just half, okay? Mickey likes these too. A shout rang out across the parking lot. Roxy ran towards them, almost breathless. Has anyone seen Kim? Chapter 17. Tommy approached the Minks van, the asphalt black and silent beneath his feet. As he neared, the stench hit him, a miasma of death and decay that clawed at the back of his throat. Inside, the van's guts were laid bare in disarray. Instruments lay scattered. The space where Kim had been quarantined was now a void. A pang of loss twinged in his chest, not just for Kim, but for the semblance of life the instruments once represented. He reached out to right an overturned guitar, its neck cracked, its strings limp. Smells like the grave. Roxy leaned against the van's frame, her arms folded across her chest. We should have never let her stay back here alone, not like this. Tommy nodded. We thought we were doing the best for her, for all of us. He glanced at Roxy, her features drawn tight. We need to find her. We can't just leave her out there not knowing. Roxy's eyes met his. Then we find her, she said, pushing away from the van. Let's just hope to hell she's still. Her voice trailed off, leaving the unsaid words hanging between them. She's gone. Kim's gone. It's like she evaporated, Spike said, peering into the murky glass of the van's rear window. This isn't good, Dee said. Not good at all. Tommy scanned the others' faces, their expressions tight with a dread that twisted his insides. All right, listen up. We're not splitting up, we're not getting sloppy. We move as one and we find Kim. Eyes open. Stay sharp. Bad idea. Eyes open. Bad idea. Layla's expression hardened as she stepped forward. She can't have gone far, not on her own. We should spread out in small groups. Do a quick sweep of the area. Tommy nodded. All right, but we shouldn't be alone. We need to have each other's back, all right? They branched out into two groups, feet crunching over debris. Shattered glass littered the lot, reflecting back the pallid light. Tommy let his instincts lead, Roxy and Zero close behind. The bushes at the edge of the lot bore the scars of a struggle. Branches snapped, leaves trampled. A path of disruption in the otherwise untouched foliage. The grip on his bat tightened with each step. Kim. Roxy's voice cracked the silence. Here. Tommy stopped and gestured to a discarded bandage stained with darkening blood. Boot prints staggered and swirled in disarray. Over here, Roxy said, her voice low and urgent. Tommy's pulse hammered in his ears as they stepped through the bushes. But as they emerged into the clearing, they found nothing. We'll keep looking, Tommy said. We'll find her. We owe her that much. They pressed on, and after a minute or so, Roxy stopped and held up a hand, her head tilted to one side. Tommy joined her. What is it? Shh. A soft rustling came through the trees, a collective pause, a shared intake of breath, and then the sound came again. Tommy exchanged a glance with Roxy and Zero gave a silent nod towards the movement. Amid the dense growth, a shadowy figure sat huddled, poking something on the ground. Kim? Roxy's mouth gaped as Kim turned to them, the remains of a crow hanging from her mouth. Tommy met those milky eyes and his throat turned dry. Roxy's hand flew to her mouth, and Zero's expression hardened. Kim's skin, once the color of warm life, was now a sickly pallor. She gazed emptily at the group. The change was undeniable. She was one of them. Tommy stood frozen. Zero stepped forward, his eyes hard, his rifle drawn. Tommy glared. "What are you doing, Zero?" "There ain't another way. This is it. This is what we do. What we have to do." Roxy shoved him aside. "Come on, there's gotta be something we can't just..." Zero held his rifle firm. "But we can, she's gone. What's left ain't Kim, it's a walking corpse." "She's one of us," Tommy said. "We don't just give up on our own." "No." Zero's voice came out in a flat tone. "She's one of them. We can't rush this. There's no coming back from this, Zero." "Back from what?" Layla's voice cut through the tension. Mickey, Spike, Dee, and Jimbo close behind. Tommy gestured towards Kim. "She's turned, and Zero wants to take her out." Layla looked between Zero and Kim. "Ain't no way I'm gonna let you shoot her." Zero sniffed. "You speak like she's still alive. She's gone, and that thing is a danger to us." "I'm with Zero," Spike said. "She said if she turned, this is what she wanted, for us to survive, to not end up like that." "What if it were me?" Mickey gestured to Kim. "Would you do the same? Just leave me to be that?" Zero's jaw clenched. "If it gets to that, yeah, it's what any of us would have to do." The crease on Lila's brow deepened. "What if there's a cure? Or something? Some way to what? Turn her back?" Zero shook his head. "This ain't a fairy tale. There ain't no magic kiss to wake her up." Kim rose to her feet, a groan erupting from within. The crow's remains tumbled from her mouth. She stepped forward, her movements disjointed, jerky. A single shot rang out through the trees. Kim fell, a marionette with severed strings. Time stuttered. Everyone stood motionless. Layla's eyes met Tommy's, but neither of them spoke. Roxy stared down at Kim lying face first in the dirt. "Is she..." Zero gave a single nod. "It's over." Roxy whirled on him, fury etched across her face. "You didn't have to do that. We could have helped her. We could have..." Her voice broke and tears rolled down her cheeks. Zero lowered the rifle, his jaw set. There was no helping her, she was already gone. He gestured to Kim. "That wasn't Kim anymore, and you all know it. I did what had to be done." "By murdering her?" Roxy shot back. "She deserved better than that." "Yeah? And what about what we deserve?" Zero's nostrils flared. "Or does our safety not matter anymore?" "Of course it matters," Tommy said. "But we're family. We don't just give up on each other." Zero let out a hollow laugh. "Family? Is that what you think we are?" He shook his head. "I'm looking to survive. That thing," he nudged Kim's body with his boot, "would have ripped us all apart given the chance." Tommy's hands curled into fists. He moved towards Zero, but Layla grabbed his arm, holding him back. "Arguing won't help anything now," she said. "What's done is done." Tommy wrenched his arm free. "Yeah, Zero murdered Kim. That's what's done." Zero sneered. "Get off your high horse. I did what I had to do to survive. Not all of us can afford your precious morals." "Maybe we should keep moving," Spike said. The gunshot was loud. It might attract more of them. A guttural moan echoed through the trees, followed by the sounds of snapping twigs and rustling underbrush. Everyone froze, exchanging alarmed glances. Zero hefted his rifle. "Just more to put down. I'm not afraid to do what needs doing." Spike grabbed his arm. "Don't be stupid, man. There could be dozens of them out there. Save your ammo." More moans filtered between the trees, seeming to come from multiple directions. Tommy pointed towards the parking lot. "Back to the vans, now." They took off, running, stumbling over the uneven ground. The moans grew louder behind them, mixed with the sounds of pursuit. "Go! Go!" Tommy crashed through the underbrush, branches whipping against his face. Risking a glance back, he saw the zombies shambling after them. Beside him, Roxy slipped on a mossy log and went down with a cry. Tommy skidded to a stop and hauled her to her feet, just as a zombie lurched from the bushes towards them. Gripping his bat, Tommy swung with all his might, the crack of the impact ringing through the woods. The zombie collapsed, its skull caved in. "Come on!" Tommy pulled Roxy along as they sprinted to catch up with the others. Just ahead, Spike gave a strangled shout as gnarled hands grasped at his jacket from behind a tree. Layla rushed to his aid, plunging her tire iron into the zombie's eye socket, black ichor spurting. The group ran on, the snarls of the undead horde at their heels. Tommy broke through the tree line into the parking lot, but between them and the vans staggered at least a dozen zombies, blank white eyes turning towards them. "We gotta fight through," Tommy shouted. "We get to the vans no matter what." With cries of effort and determination, they charged into the shambling mob, weapons swinging. Tommy smashed in head after head, the crunch of bone, the splatter of rot. All around him, bandmates battled for their lives. A zombie latched onto Dee's arm. Mickey slammed a shoulder into its ribs, sending it sprawling. Another grabbed Jimbo's leg. Roxy darted in and hacked at the zombie's wrist with her machete, severing its hand. But for every zombie they took down, more seemed to arrive. Tommy bashed a path to the lead van's door. "Get inside! Hurry!" One by one they scrambled in, Jimbo bleeding from his mouth. Tommy vaulted into the driver's seat last and gunned the engine. "Floor it," Layla said. The van's tires spun, kicking up gravel as they shot forward. In the side mirror, Tommy glimpsed another cluster of zombies break from the tree line. They staggered after the vehicles, but quickly fell behind, disappearing as the convoy sped away. He turned to Jimbo in the back. "What happened to your mouth? You haven't been—" "No, dude." Jimbo raised his hands. "Got smacked in the mouth by a thorn bush or something." He wiped the blood with a sleeve. "Damn it, that stings." Layla dragged a tissue from the glove box. "Here." Jimbo dabbed his mouth. "Thanks." They drove without speaking, putting as much distance between themselves and the supermarket as possible. The reality of the situation, Kim dead by Zero's hand, the group once again fleeing into the unknown, threatened to overwhelm him. He pushed it down. They needed leadership now more than ever, and there was no way he'd let Zero take charge. After 15 tense minutes, Tommy cleared his throat. "We should pull over soon, figure out our next move." Jimbo's eyes stayed fixed on the road. "Where? Those things are everywhere." "I know, it's Kim, man, I can't get her out of my head, you know?" Jimbo leaned forward. What choice did he have, Tommy? Kim was one of them. That wasn't Kim anymore. Layla sniffed. And what if there's a cure out there? What if we just need to hold on, keep them secure until then? Jimbo spread his hands. I don't know, dude. There's so much we don't know about any of this. We just gotta keep on keeping on. And maybe that means we look out for the living until this whole thing's done with. But what if they're still in there somewhere, aware, feeling, trapped? Her question hung between them. The thought twisted in Tommy's mind. He hadn't allowed himself to dwell on the possibility, the notion that each one they put down might be a prison of flesh, holding a consciousness screaming for release. Layla sighed. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about who we are, who we become in the face of all this. The silence returned. Jimbo looked down, his hands clasped between his knees. Maybe Zero did us a mercy. Maybe he spared her from becoming a monster in her own mind. Mickey leaned back, his gaze distant. It's messed up, isn't it? We're fighting to stay alive, but what are we doing to keep hold of who we are? Tommy didn't have the answers. He stared ahead, focusing on the road. Chapter 18. The empty highway stretched before them, a gray ribbon cutting through the landscape. Tommy's fingers tapped on the steering wheel as he drove, keeping pace with the beat of his racing heart. Beside him, Layla stared from the passenger window, her forehead resting against the glass. The horrors they had witnessed that day had taken a toll on her. He could see it in the hard set of her jaw, the tension in her shoulders, the haunted look in her eyes when she thought no one was watching. In the back, Mickey slumped in his seat. Every now and then his leg would bounce with nervous energy before settling again. Jimbo kept craning his neck to peer behind them, as if expecting the nightmares to come at any moment. They were musicians, not warriors. It wasn't fair. but the universe didn't care about fair. "How much longer until we stop?" Mickey asked, breaking the tension. Tommy shrugged. "Maybe 60 miles. Mickey sighed. "I just want to rest up somewhere, man. I'm sick of having to bash in zombie skulls. Is that too much to ask?" Layla turned from the window. "We need to move forward together, not start questioning each other." "We're still a long way from Philly," Tommy said. "Yeah, dudes," Jimbo said. "Chin up and spirits high, yeah?" Mickey nodded. The van roared down the empty highway. The stench of death and decay hung thick in the air despite their speed. Looking out the window, he could see shuffling figures dotting the landscape. Lone zombies wandering aimlessly or feasting on long-dead remains. His mind drifted to images of Neve and Sean. How long had it been since he'd spoken to them? Were they still alive? He tried to push the thoughts from his mind and focus on the road ahead. Just get back to Philly. That's all that mattered. Rounding a bend, Tommy slammed the brakes as a mass of zombies swarmed the road. Rotting bodies packed together, oblivious to the van barreling towards them. "Bloody hell," Jimbo gripped Tommy's headrest. "Where'd they all come from?" There's thousands of them," Layla whispered. Mickey slumped back. "We're screwed, totally screwed." Jimbo elbowed him. "Stow it with the doom and gloom crap. We'll get out of this. Tommy knows what he's doing. Don't you, Tommy?" What could he say? The odds of fighting their way through a horde that size were 0, but giving up wasn't an option. Not yet. They had to keep trying, had to keep moving. "Hold on." Tommy slammed his foot on the accelerator and the van surged forward. The speedometer needle swept past 60 miles per hour, 70 miles per hour, 80, as the van rattled and shook violently. Jimbo whooped. "Go, baby, go!" Tommy yanked the wheel to the left, barely avoiding an overturned trailer. "There's too many of them," Layla shrieked, her gaze sweeping across the undead horde ahead of them. "Just keep driving, don't stop," Mickey said. The horde was a churning sea of gnashing teeth and grasping arms, threatening to overwhelm them if they slowed even for a moment. Tommy jerked the wheel hard to the right, tires screeching in protest as he took the off-ramp at breakneck speed. "Hold on tight." Tommy yanked the wheel to the left and the van bumped up over the curb, rumbling back up over the grassy embankment to rejoin the highway. When the other vans appeared in the side mirror behind them, Tommy let out a breath. "How are you holding up back there?" "We're all good," Jimbo said. "Looks like everyone broke through." "Mickey?" "I'm fine. Head hurts, but I'm fine." Tommy tapped Layla's arm. "You okay?" She turned towards him, her eyes bleary with exhaustion. "I'll make it. We don't have a choice." He nodded. They lapsed back into watchful silence. Eventually, Layla's head started drooping. "Get some sleep," Tommy said. "I can keep going." She mumbled in protest, but her eyes were already closing. Within minutes, she was slumped against the window, breathing slowly in deep sleep. They were alive. They were together. For now, at least, that was enough. After a while, Jimbo opened the map on his knees and traced a long route towards the east coast with a finger. "What you thinking?" Tommy asked. Jimbo gave a wry smile. "How you at blackjack?" Tommy frowned. "What do you mean?" "Looks like we're headed to Reno." To be continued. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of Punks vs. Zombies. You can find out more about John Cronshaw and his work by visiting johncronshaw.com. Punks vs. Zombies is copyright John Cronshaw and Wyvern Books Limited. All rights reserved. This is a work of fiction,